Yeah, hi. I had a question referring to the possibility of a TV series. Like, what were your feelings about that? How far is it in the future? If it'll ever come?
We are, as you know, we started our little pilot TV series, which is Clone Wars. And we are now going to move that into a 3D animation half-hour version. It will be a regular series.
So I just finished Star Wars The Clone Wars. After completing the 2007 theatrical release and watching the entire series in chronological order, as well as the 4-part series finale, I gotta say,
Oh, not bad, not bad, huh?
I was honestly very surprised in the most positive way one could be. It's no secret I had my reservations about watching the series, being a huge fan of Star Wars episodes 1 to 3, for the films that they are. I worried that the Clone Wars series might anger me due to some blatant continuity errors it introduces that my viewers had made me aware of, but to deny the depth, intrigue, characters, and lore it introduces into the saga would be a crying shame. It's not perfect, but it's for the most part damn good. And this video is going to go step by step outlining why that is. But forgive me, covering 7 seasons in one video is not easy, and some areas will lack some nuance, some may be glossed over. I did my best to include as much as I could, and this video has gone through many edits and changes already, but it's finally here and we are ready to go. Also, I do apologize in advance if some of the editing is a bit choppy at times. I've spliced up certain bits to avoid copyright. Also, I would have loved to have used more Star Wars soundtrack in this video, but unfortunately, Old Man Williams is ever present at his desktop claiming anything that uses his god tier soundtrack. And his Padawan, Kevin Kiner, who wrote the Clone Wars soundtrack, follows swiftly in his master's footsteps. Also, it should go without saying, but here you go. Spoilers are obviously to be expected, and they are incoming, so if you have not seen the Clone Wars, you have been warned. Let's start with the 2007 theatrical release.
Why a animation versus a live-action Star Wars?
The Clone Wars are basically a footnote in the saga of Anakin Skywalker. And that's what the features are about. It's really about Anakin and about his son. And it's very narrow focused. And it's about his descent into the dark side. I wanted to do something, when I was doing episode 3, I wanted to do something that involved the Clone Wars. I was disappointed I didn't get to make a movie about the Clone Wars because it doesn't have anything to do with Anakin Skywalker, really, except he becomes friends with Obi-Wan. I wanted to do something a little bit more lighthearted, that I could deal with other characters and also deal with the personal relationship, the growth between Anakin and Obi-Wan. But it turned into an animated feature film.
So no doubt a lot of you are probably wondering what exactly I thought of the Clone Wars theatrical release, and this is probably going to surprise a lot of you, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Now, apparently it's popular opinion by the internet mainstream morons that it's the worst Star Wars movie to date.
You've spent weeks arguing about The Mandalorian. You'll spend months arguing about the rise of Skywalker. Now, watch the one Star Wars movie capable of uniting the entire fan base by agreeing it's the worst theatrically released movie in the franchise. Easily.
Side note, if you've ever watched Screen Junkies,
Son, just don't.
the 2007 Clone Wars movie served as the introduction to Ahsoka Tano, Anakin Skywalker's apprentice, that came into canon after the prequels were made. Yes, her existence is somewhat of a retcon, and certainly a blemish on the character, but the amount of depth and personality she brings into the Star Wars universe, as well as her relationship to the soon-to-be Darth Vader, Ben Kenobi, and the clone troopers, flushes out the saga in a way that many fans have always hoped for. It's not that we didn't get that in the prequels or the original trilogy, but the films can only give us so much, since they are self-contained chapters of an overarching story. The Clone Wars series was an excellent way to provide the nuances of the Star Wars universe, its factions, its worlds, and its intricacies, and its characters that we wanted more of but sadly did not get to see. The theatrical release did a fantastic job as an introduction to all of that, and it threw us right into the middle of the action. We see what a regular day in the time period of the Clone Wars looks like for people on the front lines, what the relationship between the clones and the Jedi looks like. And at the same time, the theatrical release introduces some new characters whilst giving us an awesome self-contained Jedi adventure, all rolled into one. Also, hearing Christopher Lee's voice again as Count Dooku, even for just that one part of the Clone Wars, was just so cathartic as a massive prequel fan.
I'm sure you did the best you could. We will discuss your failure later.
Yes, my master.
Your training has come a long way, boy.
Fear you, Skywalker. You have hate, you have anger, but you don't use them.
Now, I feel like this would be a good time to talk about one of my initial reservations regarding the Clone Wars, and that is Matt Lanter's portrayal of Anakin Skywalker. And I have mentioned this before in another video. Don't get me wrong. I like this version of Anakin. I do. But according to canon, it's only been about 6 months since Attack of the Clones. And as we can see, this Anakin has gone through some serious changes since then. In episode 2, he was meant to be portrayed as a young Jedi Padawan who comes across as a petulant teenager, yearning to break free from his boundaries, struggling with his predisposition for attachment, which is driving him to become more powerful to protect those he cares about. And Hayden Christensen betrayed that exactly to George Lucas's vision to be consistent with that character. However, Matt Lanter's Anakin, on the other hand, sounds like he's substantially older and much more mature for that matter, despite there being only a 6-month period of time between the Clone Wars theatrical and episode 2.
So if you're ready, you better start proving it. Captain Rex will show you how a little respect can go a long way. Right.
Why else do you think we were assigned to her if not to find the killer? Protection is a job for local security, not Jedi. It's overkill, Master. Investigation is implied in our mandate.
I admit Ahsoka is a little rough around the edges, but with a great deal of training and patience, she might amount to something.
We'll take him together. You're going slowly on the left.
Taking him now! No, Anakin, no! No!
This is actually something that the Clone Wars 2003 got correct with Anakin's character, if I'm being honest. I wasn't a big fan of the voice actor in the 03 Clone Wars for Anakin. While we're on the subject, some of you are probably wondering what I thought of the 2003 Clone Wars micro-series. I just want to make it clear that I didn't hate it, but, well, let me put it to you this way.
Oh! Oh! Oh!
But Anakin's demeanor in that version was very consistent with Hayden Christensen's character in Attack of the Clones. Look, it's a mild grievance I have, and it by no means breaks anything. It just seems like they were aiming to give Anakin his demeanor from Revenge of the Sith right away, instead of easing into that. In the Clone Wars theatrical, he's a seasoned Jedi general who has become far more mature, and I get that service during wartime would certainly aid to quicken his maturity, but yeah, I think this could have taken a season or two. I mean, the fact that he had a new Padawan learner could have been an excellent driving force for that change in personality. But while we're on the topic of voice actors, James Arnold Taylor could not have been a better choice for Obi-Wan Kenobi. The quick-witted, charming and wise Jedi Knight is ever on point in this movie, and he only gets better throughout the entire series.
You must be the infamous General Kenobi.
I surrender.
Don't try any of your tricks, Jedi.
Surely there's no reason we can't be civilized about this. You'll have to do better than that, my darling. Well, now I'm impressed.
Also, I know this is probably a tired point by now, but I love the visual storytelling on display with Anakin and Kenobi's fighting gear. The fact that their upper torso and shoulders are made up of clone armor indicates a personal level of value and respect each general places on their troopers. And we can observe this just by looking. We know this without having to be explicitly told. And honestly, I've always preferred their outfits in this movie as well as the first 2 seasons of the Clone Wars as opposed to their standard Jedi robes. But that's entirely subjective. And this finally leads me to Ahsoka. I had heard some amazing things about this character prior to watching this series. Apparently she was thought of as an annoying brat at the start of the series by the majority of fans, but she never bothered me, even in this movie. I didn't expect a very smooth master-student relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka right off the bat. She was still finding her footing, being placed into this new environment and dynamic with an authority figure, and Anakin was having to adjust as well. He's a reckless, headstrong Jedi who now has to come to terms with the fact that he's responsible for another life. Yoda and Kenobi made this decision in the hopes of reeling him in from his reckless ways, but it also feeds into Anakin's predisposition to attachment, which long-term also feeds into the downfall of the Jedi.
Don't worry, Anakin. Just teach her everything I taught you and she'll turn out fine.
You know, something makes me think this was your idea from the start.
Let's just hope Anakin is ready for this responsibility.
Ready he is to teach an apprentice to let go of his pupil. A greater challenge it will be.
However, that aside, undoubtedly the heart and soul of the movie and the entire series is the dynamic between Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano. They initially start off at odds with one another, but over the course of the movie, Anakin realizes that Ahsoka possesses several traits that mirror his own. They are more alike than he had initially thought, which is one of the reasons Yoda and Obi-Wan had selected her to be his apprentice. She is an unconventional Padawan who needs an unconventional master.
You're reckless, little one. You never would have made it as Obi-Wan's Padawan. But you might make it as mine. Come on.
Anyway, I've probably rambled on about the Clone Wars movie for long enough, and while admittedly there were some odd choices made with its design, narrative, and production, it was a great start to the series and a very enjoyable watch. But now let's finally get started on Season 1 of the Clone Wars.
In my book, experience outranks everything.
Well, if experience outranks everything, I guess I better start getting some.
It has a couple of bad, or rather subpar episodes, but it's not a bad season. Which is pretty much true for the whole series, except for Seasons 5 and 6, where things get a bit more messy. But in the case of Season 1, namely the ridiculously over-the-top comedy episode Bomb Bad Jedi, where Jar Jar is mistaken for a Jedi Knight, that's probably the worst episode by a comfortable margin that the season has to offer. It's certainly entertaining, but it also had me rolling my eyes numerous times because of the sheer lunacy of it all. Another episode in Season 1 that I wasn't particularly fond of was Episode 7, Duel of the Droids. It certainly got a lot of great action in it. That much is undeniable. Ahsoka's duel with Grievous was okay, although I think some parts of it were handled very clumsily. But the biggest what the fuck moment of that episode, and I did briefly mention this in my Season 1 review, I still can't figure out why General Grievous needed to steal R2-D2's data from inside the Republic, when the whole time he was able to send in a double agent astro droid that could have just downloaded whatever information he needed from the Republic database in the first place. Truthfully, I think the whole R3 plotline in Season 1 was a mistake. Thankfully, it's pretty self-contained and doesn't damage much of the rest of the season.
R3, what have you to report?
That stubby little backstabber.
As for the rest of the season, the Malevolence arc with Plo Koon, Anakin, and Kenobi was awesome. But the continuity error of having Obi-Wan fighting Grievous when he really shouldn't was a notable letdown for me.
Hello there.
Hello there.
I've been trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku.
It's the kind of error I was afraid to encounter when considering watching the series, and this is sadly repeated throughout the Clone Wars, though if nothing else, the duels between Grievous and Obi are a pretty awesome spectacle. I also enjoyed the episode with Yoda at the beginning and how, being the wise master he is, instructed the clones as to what their purpose is, and how each of them individually serves a crucial role.
Come, sit. Your helmets, remove them. Your faces I wish to see.
There's not much to look at here, sir. We all share the same face.
Deceive you, eyes can. In the Force, very different each one of you are.
General, you don't plan to take that whole column by yourself.
Have you three I do? Outnumbered are they?
Also, the Ryloth arc was outstanding, where Waxer and Boyle save the Twi'lek youngling and help liberate the planet with Obi-Wan. It's a 3-phase fight. One episode has Anakin and Ahsoka fighting to let supply ships through in space. Obi-Wan and the clones are then liberating civilians on the ground, and Mace Windu drives out the Separatist leadership to finish the fight. Hondo capturing Dooku, Anakin, and Kenobi was hilarious. It has its problems, but I was thoroughly entertained nonetheless. But undoubtedly, the best episodes were the ones with the clones themselves. And I'm talking episodes from Season 3 as well, since I watched this series, as should you, in chronological order, not the order of release. Seriously, unless you have some sort of vendetta against the Clone Wars, you are doing yourself a massive disservice by not watching it in chronological order. And if you're looking for the best experience possible, why wouldn't you? Anyway, you meet Domino Squad in the episode Clone Cadets. This was a great episode, as each trooper would have an important part to play throughout the Clone Wars, and this episode takes the time to establish them. And can I just say, let's all raise a glass to my boy 99 here, a Bad Batch clone that was just such a trooper, damn it. He was an excellent idea, used to provide perspective and motivation to the disgruntled clones who aren't thrilled with their duty. 99 was literally a failed test tube subject who was bred for war, was ultimately unfit for battle, and now he's forced to scrub floors for the rest of his life because he has no purpose. He tells Heavy the clones have a purpose and can find meaning in their lives by standing by and helping their brothers. It's the hand they were dealt, and they have to make the most of it.
We're nothing but a bad batch. Failures. Like you.
Yeah, but how can I be a failure when I never even got my chance? There's a chance you're thrown away. Maybe you should embrace the fact that you have a team. See, I never had that, but you need them, and they need you.
We're just numbers, 99. Just numbers.
To me, you've always had a name.
This enables Heavy to put aside his differences with Domino Squad, come together, and graduate with the rest of them from the Clone Academy. And this adds to the tragic loss of Heavy when he sacrifices himself to take out the relay tower in the episode Rookies.
Heavy, get out of there! The remote isn't working. I'll have to detonate it manually.
Hold on there. Blast him! Do we take prisoners?
I don't.
Heavy always did hate that place.
All in all, Season 1 was awesome, not without its faults, and laid an excellent foundation as the opening season to this series. Let's move on to Season 2.
Looks like we got ourselves a batch of shinies, Commander.
Shinies, sir?
That's right. Your armor. It's shiny and new. Just like you.
This collection of episodes had the Duchess of Mandalore arc where Obi-Wan meets an old friend in Duchess Satine, and it's revealed that the two almost sparked a romance when Obi-Wan was a young apprentice to Qui-Gon. In fact, the whole Mandalore plotline and the concept of neutrality in the galaxy during the peak time of the Clone Wars, I thought was a very interesting piece of storytelling and world building. Duchess Satine is head of what's called the Council of Neutral Systems, and she's trying to keep Mandalore separate from the Republic or the Separatists for that matter, though there's an internal societal conflict brewing between the Mandalorian people, their pacifist government, and the Mandalorians that seek to overthrow the Duchess, a renegade group called Death Watch, which is essentially a cult of Mandalorian extremists that believe the old ways to be the true way of the Mandalore. The Mandalorians are very much a proud people, and in the days of the Old Republic, they were a warrior race. Sound familiar?
The mighty prince of the ultimate warrior race!
Now, after years and years, they have become quite distant from their old customs, but the one thing they never lost as a people was their pride. Their pride as Mandalorians. They govern themselves and are very reluctant to accept Republic help or interference with their own way of life. The Clone Wars is forcing everyone to take a side, and this is resulting in Republic occupation on dozens of systems, and it's also creating military targets for the Separatists. And this falls nicely into the Death Watch conspiracy arc. Obi-Wan is sent to the Duchess to find out if Mandalore had any involvement with Jango Fett, and we get a nice little detail here.
Oh, I'm aware of the Duchess's views.
Master Kenobi, Mandalore's violent past is behind us. All of our warriors were exiled to our moon, Concordia. They died out years ago.
Are you certain? I recently encountered a man who wore Mandalorian armor. Jango Fett.
Jango Fett was a common bounty hunter. How he acquired that armor is beyond me.
Much later.
This is my father, Jango Fett.
Your father was a foundling.
Yes.
I am confused.
Anyway, this eventually leads to a terrorist bombing, very much making a statement on behalf of Death Watch. And this leads Obi-Wan's investigation to the moon of Concordia, just off-world, where the terrorist was thought to have originated from. Prior to Obi-Wan's arrival, we see that Death Watch has amassed a considerable army and are making a deal with Count Dooku to take Mandalore by force. But upon arrival of the Duchess and Obi-Wan, everything seems normal on Concordia, and they are welcomed with open arms by Governor Vizla, who runs the system independently, but who is indeed subservient to Duchess Satine in the Mandalorian hierarchy. Obi-Wan has his suspicions and conducts his investigation solo while the Duchess keeps the Governor occupied. Little did Obi-Wan know what he was about to uncover. He is then attacked by two Death Watch warriors in what is admittedly a very goofy looking fight scene, and although you could say Obi-Wan was caught off guard, he does kinda go down like a bitch, leaving him helpless to the mercy of Death Watch and in need of the Duchess's help. I was kind of annoyed in the episode where the Duchess somehow manages to save Obi-Wan by the skin of her teeth, and the fact that she was able to break into the Death Watch facility unscathed I thought was pretty laughable.
Well, it certainly took you long enough.
You know, I haven't saved you yet.
Yes, no need to remind me of that.
Let's see, one of these.
Satine, turn the machine off!
I'm trying!
Satine!
During their escape, the leader of Death Watch reveals himself to be Governor Vizla, also known as Pre-Vizla. And here's a fun fact for some of you. Did you know Pre-Vizla was also voiced by Jon Favreau?
This lightsaber was stolen from your Jedi temple
by my ancestors during the fall of the Old Republic. I had mentioned that, I would love to do a voice. I've done voices before. The idea for me to play a Mandalorian came up. I wasn't holding out for a cool character, but I think the Mandalorians are probably the ones that the diehards are going to be most curious about.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme. Mm-hmm. Every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one.
Poetic, I know, but in addition to that, Pre-Vizsla's a great character and was an excellent foil for Duchess Satine in the political realm. He's ambitious, proud, and fights like a warrior, but he's also a cunning, deceptive prick who preaches honor and inspires loyalty, but who also uses a whole bunch of underhanded tactics to achieve his goals and kill his enemies. There's several layers to the conflict on Mandalore: Duchess Satine's pacifism and push for neutrality to avoid entanglement in the Clone Wars, and the terrorist organization that fancies themselves rebels in the form of Death Watch, led by a fanatic in Pre-Vizla who's pushing for a return to Mandalore's older, more barbaric customs, believing that Mandalorians have lost their way and need to be militarized to defend themselves, as well as being ready to fight should the time come. And of course, you throw on top of that the personal history Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Duchess have with each other, and you have the recipe for a complicated mess. And this is why I get very annoyed when people say you should keep the politics out of Star Wars, because if you actually indulge the politics and the intricacies of the universe, it's quite fascinating indeed how these worlds coexist, how these cultures govern themselves, and internally conflict with different ideologies, and how this all fits into the larger scope of the Galactic Republic, the Senate, and the Civil War that's demanding everyone to take one side or the other. We will return to these plot lines in Season 5, rest assured, but as for Season 2, this leads straight into the Voyage of Temptation, and another attempt on the Duchess's life.
You and Satine have a history. An extended mission when I was younger. Master Qui-Gon and I spent a year on Mandalore, protecting the Duchess from insurgents who had threatened her world. They sent bounty hunters after us. We were always on the run, living hand to mouth, never sure what the next day would bring.
Sounds romantic.
The episode where the Duchess is held hostage, as Obi-Wan is forced to reveal his true feelings for her that he held in the past, while the Duchess is held at gunpoint.
Obi-Wan, it looks like I may never see you again. I don't know quite how to say this, but I've loved you from the moment you came to my aid all those years ago.
I don't believe this.
Satine, this is hardly the time or place for... All right. Had you said the word, I would have left the Jedi Order.
That is touching.
She manages to disarm him, and then Obi and the Duchess have the assassin in their firing line. But he is unarmed, save for the remote detonator he carries, which is attached to explosives that will ultimately blow up the entire ship. As the assassin explains, Duchess Satine can't be the one to pull the trigger. He is indeed working for Death Watch, who is trying to uproot her pacifist government. And if the Duchess becomes a killer, even to save lives, That makes her a massive hypocrite and goes against every single pacifist ideal she's ever preached. And Obi-Wan, dictated by his Jedi code, can't be the one to kill the assassin because he's unarmed, despite him about to commit mass murder with the click of a button. It's an interesting dilemma, only for then Anakin not even hesitating to stab the assassin in the back with his lightsaber, ultimately killing him. Rightfully so, but even to Obi-Wan's slight disappointment, he did break the code.
Anakin.
What? He was gonna blow up the ship.
What I like about the show is that it provides many circumstances that go out of its way to show us why the Jedi way is flawed, and I loved how they added a touch of Vader's theme when Anakin did this, just to give it that much more of a chilling punch. As for Obi-Wan having romantic interests, even in his Padawan years, I'm honestly mixed on this, the reason being it kinda goes against how he's portrayed in the prequels, as a very by-the-books Jedi, who despite being Anakin's closest friend, Obi-Wan's inability to relate to Anakin's struggle and his feelings of attachments limit their relatability to one another as master and apprentice.
You're sweating. Relax. Take a deep breath.
I haven't seen her in 10 years, Master.
We're here to protect you, Senator, not to start an investigation.
We will find out who's trying to kill you, Padme. I promise you.
We will not exceed our mandate, my young Padawan learner.
I meant it in the interest of protecting her, Master, of course.
We will do exactly as the Council has instructed.
I don't sleep well anymore.
Because of your mother?
I don't know why I keep dreaming about her.
Dreams pass in time.
I'd much rather dream about Padme. Just being around her again is intoxicating.
Be mindful of your thoughts, Anakin. They betray you. You've made a commitment to the Jedi Order, a commitment not easily broken.
Obi-Wan's past, however, with Duchess Satine, kind of contradicts that. The beginning arc of Season 2, which had Cad Bane tracking down a select group of younglings at the request of Darth Sidious and taking them to his secure facility for experimentation on Mustafar, was a great Kickstarter for Season 2, but the part I really wanted to briefly highlight was the excellent foreshadowing and irony of Anakin saving one of the younglings from the fiery pits of the planet, where he would one day face the consequences for his betrayal in Revenge of the Sith, especially when you consider the likelihood that he probably killed that very same youngling he saved. Personally, on my first watch through, I saw this almost like it was Anakin looking into his dark future when he stared into the lava pits. And if this was helmed by anyone other than George Lucas and Dave Filoni, I would have thought I was crazy for coming to such a conclusion. But foreshadowing is very much a staple of George Lucas's work. Also, another one of my favourite moments with Anakin is when he's trying to rescue Ahsoka, and due to his attachment to her, and the fact that time is running out, Anakin taps into his dark side nature and uses Force Choke for the first time on the Geonosian prisoner that they contain, in order to get the answers he needs, so that he can save her life.
Mind tricks? I don't need mind tricks to get you to talk.
Talk, Jedi.
We'll see about that, Poggle.
We once again hear Vader's theme echoing, and Anakin, not too proud of his actions and being afraid of being judged by the Jedi Council, lies about how he acquired that information. Or rather, he just makes sure not to answer their questions directly.
You interrogated Poggle.
I did. There wasn't time to get the rest of you.
How did you get him to talk?
Look, all that matters is that he told me how to stop the worms.
We also see the difference in perspective between Anakin and Master Luminara on their missing apprentices when Ahsoka and Barriss are trapped underground. Should their apprentices be dead, we see that Master Luminara is ready to let go if the worst should come, but Anakin cannot, as is the core of his character and need to control his fate and the fate of his loved ones, especially after the death of his mother.
I wasn't strong enough to save you, Mom, but I promise I won't fail again.
We cannot abandon our Padawans.
You misjudge me. I too care for my apprentice, but if their time has come...
I refuse to let Ahsoka die. She will find a way out.
If my Padawan has perished, I will mourn her, but I will celebrate her as well through her memory.
Well, I still plan on celebrating this victory with my Padawan, in person.
I won't let these visions come true, Master Yoda.
Death is a natural part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. Mourn them, do not. Miss them, do not.
I knew they were still alive. I told you we shouldn't give up on them.
It's not that I gave up, Skywalker, but unlike you, when the time comes, I am prepared to let my student go. Can you say the same?
Attachment leads to jealousy. The shadow of greed, that is.
What must I do, Master Yoda?
Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose.
You're a good person. Don't do this.
I won't lose you the way I lost my mother.
The Zillo Beast arc was kind of a mixed bag, to be honest. I thought it was a cool concept, and it certainly had its moments of good and bad, but it ends with Palpatine asking his officials to clone the Zillo Beast for some unknown purpose, and to my knowledge, it's never brought up again. The concept feels like it was ripped straight out of Godzilla and King Kong, which in all honesty doesn't surprise me, since George Lucas loves taking inspirations and concepts from old movies and blending the ideas of retro cinema in with his modern sci-fi fantasy saga. I mean, after all, Star Wars as a whole was inspired by Flash Gordon, remember?
This was one of the most bizarre story meetings I've ever had with George. We go in there to get these ideas, and George was doing a lot of genre pictures in season 2. We had kind of a Body Snatchers episode, we had Zombies episode, we had the Murder Mysteries, and out of nowhere, he hits me with this, let's face it, it's Godzilla.
If you want more information on how George took inspiration for the filming of Star Wars, I'd suggest watching Rick Worley's excellent video on the topic. He explains it far better than I ever could. But back to the Zillo Beast. So basically, what makes this creature so valuable is that it's presumably the last of its kind in the galaxy, incredibly rare, and possesses armor, or rather scales, of its biology that can render a lightsaber, arguably the most deadly melee weapon in the Star Wars universe, that can cut through just about anything except ray shields, completely harmless. Like I said, good concept, and I like where it draws its inspiration from, and I can think of several applications Palpatine could find use for such a trait, namely the outer hull for the Death Star that's already secretly under construction. But again, after the Zillo Beast's death, we get a tease for a continuation of the arc, but nothing ultimately comes of it, which is disappointing. One of my issues with Season 2, which bleeds into the rest of the Clone Wars series, is the amount of time Anakin and Mace Windu are paired together. In Revenge of the Sith, it's Mace Windu who has reservations of trusting Anakin.
It's very dangerous putting them together. I don't think the boy can handle it. I don't trust him.
Now, yes, I understand that his reason for distrusting Anakin was because of his relationship to Palpatine rather than a lack of faith in Anakin's skills.
The Council is confident in its decision, Obi-Wan.
The boy has exceptional skills.
But based on the amount of time Anakin proves himself in Mace's presence throughout the duration of the Clone Wars, it seems to me like he should absolutely trust him. Or that they should have been much more familiar with each other by the time Revenge of the Sith rolls around. Possibly my favorite episode in Season 2 was The Deserter, where Rex finds a clone soldier who's left the fight to find another purpose and start a family. It isn't the most objectively solid episode in the season, but it tells the story of one of my personal biggest what-if fanfictions. I always did wonder what it would be like to see if a clone trooper was found wounded after a battle, nursed back to health by someone he would eventually grow feelings for and start a family with, or if that was even possible for a clone. And this episode told that story. All in all, Season 2 was a pretty awesome experience. It had a lot of interesting new plot threads, some great moments between characters, and only the occasional disappointment. I look forward to revisiting it again, one day. But now, let's move on to Season 3.
Both of you showed valor out there. Real courage. Remind me of me, actually.
Season 3 was mostly great. Mostly. I really enjoyed the Citadel escape arc. Seeing Tarkin make an appearance was kind of surreal, and showing how he shared a lot of ideals that Anakin did for how order should be kept and maintained was a great setup for their eventual partnership in the Empire.
And it just so happened that organically in one of the story meetings, we had an opportunity to introduce another one of these Imperial officers. George, I believe, was the one that suggested, well, why not Tarkin for the Citadel series of episodes? And we all thought, wow, what a great opportunity. Though he's only in one of the Star Wars films, 2 if you count his brief performance in Revenge of the Sith, he made a lasting impression. And it really gave us a chance to explore the very beginning of the relationship between Anakin Skywalker and Tarkin. How they have similarities, how they kind of think the same.
Have I offended you?
No.
Anakin even kind of begrudgingly admits that the Jedi aren't doing enough that they need to do to win the war.
Well, I see we agree on something.
Dooku betraying Ventress was another interesting plot thread, which further reinforced the rule of 2 of the Sith that I appreciated, because Palpatine senses Ventress's power growing under Dooku's training, and he doesn't want her to become a threat with Dooku, so he orders Dooku to kill her off prematurely, much to Dooku's own regret, but being a Sith Lord, he ultimately will do what's best for his own interest no matter what.
Your assassin. She has become very powerful. Yes, my lord. She is quite important to me. Too important. Master. Silence. I can sense her powers growing stronger. I would hate to think you are training your own Sith apprentice to destroy me. Never. My allegiance is to you and you alone. Then you must prove it. Eliminate her. She's my most trusted. I said, eliminate her!
After Ventress escapes, we get introduced to Dathomir and the Night Sisters. This treaded some very murky ground for me, since the idea of dark magic in Star Wars kind of messes with the whole purpose of the Force being the universal magic in the Star Wars universe that only those with a certain connection to it can tap into. But it was pretty cool to see yet another Star Wars faction introduced, and we see how males of Dathomir are relegated to a brutal selection process, a trial for their best warriors where only a select few pass, and it's here Ventress adopts her new apprentice, being Savage Opress, who she repurposes and smuggles into Dooku's service as his new Padawan, where he trains Savage, giving him a huge leg up in his Force training, but ultimately the plot backfires, and both Ventress and Savage are left without a teacher or purpose for themselves.
Ventress. That's no way to treat your apprentice. I should know. Kill him! Kill him, you fool!
I can't. He's too powerful.
Your weakness will not be my downfall.
A failed apprentice makes for a foolish master.
Leaving so soon, Master?
You are no match for me without the aid of your monster.
That remains to be seen.
As you wish.
And so the Night Sisters send Savage off to find another teacher, his long-lost brother who, you bet your ass, we're going to have to talk a lot about later. And before we move on, here's another fun fact for all of you. Did you know that the voice actor for Savage Opress is the same person who voices Mr. Krabs? Just found that out recently myself. Secondly, fun fact, do you know who voices Savage? Don't look it up. I want to see if you know.
I'd never actually thought about it.
It's the drill instructor from Starship Troopers, Zim.
Oh, I've never seen Starship Troopers.
Oh, really? Okay. It's the the guy who's like head of the prison guard in Shawshank.
I don't know Shawshank.
Jesus Christ. You gotta watch Shawshank Redemption, man. The chat will know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that surprised me. Clancy Brown's his name.
Oh, Clancy Brown!
You know Clancy Brown, but you don't know fucking Shawshank.
He's freaking Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob.
What?
Yes, and he's
Are you fucking serious?
And he's also Lex Luthor in the DCAU.
But fucking Mr. Krabs is Clancy Brown.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
I'm like, buddy, that's him.
Yeah, you were like, oh, he's this guy. I'm like, okay, but then it's like, oh, Clancy Brown. You mean one of the most famous voice actors in Western animation?
He is? I thought he was more famous for his acting. He was in Shawshank Redemption.
He's Mr. Krabs.
Hello, I like money.
Oh my god. Oh, he's like, you don't know Shawshank. Being like, newsflash, Noms, he's a fucking famous dude.
Yeah. He's Lex Luthor. Gosh dang it. He's Lex Luthor too in the DCAU. Like,
I know, mind blowing. One of the best episodes in the entire series is the episode Arc Troopers, where the Separatists attack the cloning facilities on Kamino. We see Domino Squad has a reunion with Number 99, and he's saddened to learn about Heavy's death back in Season 1.
You actually remember us. Oh, I remember all my brothers. Heavy here? Where's he? There was an incident on the Rishi Moon outpost. He saved our lives, but he gave up his own. Oh, I see. Heavy gave you his medal?
The battle on Kamino gets to the desperate point where 99 was actually limping around trying to help his brothers fending off the Clankers, by doing ammo runs from one squad to another, and this ultimately cost 99 his life. 99 was an absolute G. This death really got me, I'm not gonna lie. Meanwhile, on Kamino, Kenobi is facing off with Grievous and Anakin fights Ventress in two very awesome duels. This episode was well-paced, action-packed, and pulled no punches. Finally, let's talk about Season 3's Mortis arc. I know a lot of people were probably wondering what I thought about this. Honestly, I wasn't really sold on this arc the first time I watched it. It certainly was intriguing and compelling, but in terms of the lore surrounding the Force itself, I think it kind of threw things a little out of whack. Let me see if I got the gist of this right. The daughter of Mortis is the embodiment of the light side of the Force. The son of Mortis is the embodiment of the dark side of the Force, and Mortis himself is the balance that keeps them in check.
George is highly involved in all aspects of this series, but when we deal directly with the Force, Christian Taylor and I feel very strongly that, that word has to come directly from George. A lot of the notes from Mortis come from a really old binder that George has that has his original writings on what the Force is and what makes it up.
The core of the Force. I mean, you got the dark side, the light side. One is selfless, one is selfish. And you want to keep them in balance.
Like I said, it's a messy arc, but one I look forward to watching again soon. It was quite riveting watching Anakin see visions of his dark destiny, realizing what he will become unless action is taken. Ultimately, Mortis erases his memory of it all, having faith that Anakin can still change his destiny on his own. Now, according to George Lucas, Dave Filoni, and the rest of the creative team at Lucasfilm, the level of ambiguity used in this arc was very much by design in order to leave things up for interpretation, so the attentive audience members can piece together the puzzle on their own and come to their own conclusions.
You will notice on this box that there is no lengthy documentary on the Mortis trilogy. Christian Taylor, who wrote the trilogy, and myself, we both firmly believe that we should really not answer directly a lot of the questions about Mortis. Was that really Qui-Gon Jinn that appeared to Obi-Wan in the cave or not? What does it mean that Ahsoka talks to her older self? Will she ever reach that age? Who was the father? What does it mean now that Anakin's the chosen one and that he has a better understanding of that? Ahsoka apparently died and she came back to life. Does that have any meaning? We have answers to those questions for sure, but if I answer directly what something is, I feel that I'll be robbing you of the purpose of that arc, which is to make you wonder, it's to make you challenge certain ideas, to ask questions.
I can respect that. Again, the arc leaves itself off at a point where, canonically, it could have all just been a dream. So in the grand scheme of things, the arc itself does go to daring bounds, which do reveal certain things that probably shouldn't have been, but is ultimately quite harmless and doesn't really affect any plot threads or characters outside of its own making. Ultimately, the problems I had with this arc can be somewhat nullified with the ambiguous ending that left the audience wondering if all of that actually transpired or if it was just a shared Force dream between Anakin, Ahsoka, and Kenobi. But that's where I'll leave Season 3 because I really want to move on to the next one.
As sure as it is my duty to remain loyal to your command, I also have another duty, to protect those men.
Season 4 was absolutely fucking fantastic. My pick for the best Clone Wars season. It starts off in an odd way, leading you straight into a conflict with the Mon Calamari leadership, and there's a nice arc that plays out with the Mon Calamari Prince learning through observing the Jedi and General Akbar, who I love made an appearance in this arc. The Mon Calamari Prince learns how to become a leader and ultimately liberates his people from the Separatist oppression. Also, Jar Jar, Mad Lad Binks, and the Gungans are called in as reinforcements, which was just awesome in every sense of the word. In case you missed the Phantom Menace, the Gungans are badasses. They are a warrior race.
Gungans no dying without a fight. We say warriors. We say got a grand army.
Sound familiar?
We Saiyans evolved as a warrior race. We retain our youthfulness so we can fight longer.
And as the film showed us, they are great in a fight. Even when they aren't in their element, even when they're on land, they are great in a fight. This arc is then immediately followed up by the Umbara arc, and holy capital fuck, this arc was amazing. It started out with you thinking it's going to be just another day on the job, but next thing you know, Rex's squad is thrown into a hellfire zone that is just a balls-out, no-holds-barred fight for survival, all due to the cruel command of a ruthless Jedi general that turns out to be a traitor vying for Count Dooku's favor. The Umbara arc was also very clearly inspired by the Vietnam War, as you can see from its cinematography. Also, fun fact, the clone carrier ships were very much inspired by choppers used in the Vietnam War to insert and evac troops from ground engagements. You can find that somewhere in the Attack of the Clones documentaries and featurettes. It was these 4 episodes that cemented Rex as my favorite Clone Wars character after he makes a stand for his troops, challenging a Jedi Master's command, someone he has been programmed from birth to follow orders from in order to save the lives of his men, by what would likely have cost him his own life.
This entire operation has been compromised because of your failure!
Sir, if I may address your accusation, I followed your orders, even in the face of a plan that was, in my opinion, severely flawed. A plan that cost us men, not clones, men!
Rex is an absolute legend. And that scene where it turns out Rex and Fives were set up and were actually fighting their own brothers in arms, which resulted in the death of Waxer, was very sad and honestly chilled me to the bone.
What?
Stop firing! We're shooting at our own men! Close! We close! We're all closed!
What? Waxer. It was General Krell. He sent us to these coordinates to stop the enemy. We thought they were wearing our armor. But it was you.
A terrible tragedy, and such is war. Finally, let's talk about one of the big issues I have with Season 4, the resurrection of Darth Maul. Now, based on how this was done, I know this decision was made in order to provide fan service to the whiny fanboy shitbags who threw a fit after this perfectly fine villain was killed off at the end of The Phantom Menace, so Lucasfilm and George Lucas and Dave Filoni decided to bring him back. And how did Darth Maul survive, you ask? I have no idea. Something hatred, apparently. He gets cut in half, falls to the bottom of a shaft, gets really mad at Kenobi to the point of losing his mind, and then teleports to a random planet where he hides underground eating bugs and ultimately becomes the Scorpion King. How did this happen? This is ludicrous.
Talk about the return of Darth Maul. Now I know what you're saying. He got cut in half, he fell down a shaft, but if you watch the show, you know that he lived. Hard as that was to believe, hard as it was to create. So who better to bring together than to help explain how this all went down than a panel of experts who made it happen.
Now, I have a question for you, Dave. This animation for the
Yes.
Spider Maul, like
Yes,
that's
Spider Maul.
very Ray Harryhausen in terms of the way it moves, like stop motion.
Yeah, I mean that Keith Kellogg, the animation supervisor, we worked on giving it a lot of the semblance. We wanted to feel like the Force was holding it together, that his twisted mind is all that kept it together. We didn't want something that looked like someone had worked on it and put it together.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted it to be an artifact of his kind of schizophrenia.
In the original script, he was foraging, so he would bring people down and eat. He was eating animals, so there were carcasses everywhere, and he was using their parts to build his legs. But
it truly was one of those hairs on the back of your neck moments in watching this at home with, it's like, wow. This guy is back, but he's just insane.
I would have been much more forgiving if any of this was actually explained, but they don't even try. Referring back to the mortis arc we previously discussed, it's fine to leave some questions unanswered because it was self-contained and relatively inconsequential to the rest of the saga, and the arc's ambiguity was very much by design and done with purpose. As far as the Clone Wars series is concerned, we don't know whether it actually happened or not. However, on the other hand, bringing a major character back from the dead is a huge retcon, and certainly does require some explanation since he becomes involved in several plot lines in the latter half of the series. There is no excuse for not including an explanation or even a flashback scene that fills in these blanks. These aren't the kind of small off-screen issues that can be substituted with inference. as opposed to actual on-screen nuance. This is a completely empty thread for a core character's resurrection that was neither warranted nor justified, regardless of whose fault it is. And they make it worse when Savage Opress brings Darth Maul back to his home planet of Dathomir, where the Night Sisters use their very questionable magic to snap him out of madness and give him 2 magic metal legs instead of 17.
Originally we had this shot and there were no cables or metal involved at all. And she formed it like she formed Savage's spear, just out of thin air. But then George said, you know, he wanted more logic to it. So Joel did this great effect where you actually see the fusing of the metal and the magic.
The burning.
The burning.
And it seems like it's painful too, which is what I like.
Oh yeah, you're screaming. It's fantastic.
Custom made. Titanium alloy. What they use on the space shuttle.
Magic legs.
Right, now that was bad. Very, 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 very bad. But what did it lead to? Was it worth it? Everyone's been asking me, what do I think of this portrayal of Darth Maul in the Clone Wars as a character? Well, I'm here to tell you, I love Darth fucking Maul. Every time Sam Witwer prays his name, delivers any of Maul's dialogue, I am absolutely captivated.
Always remember I am fear. Always remember I am hunter. Always remember I am filth. Always remember I am nothing.
Maul has the most well-written dialogue in the Clone Wars easily. And seeing him and Savage murder innocent civilians by the drove to lure out his most hated nemesis to take revenge he waited over a decade for, immediately cemented him as a major player and a do not fuck with this guy kind of villain. Maul was indeed about to annihilate Obi, were it not for the actions of Ventress, who coincidentally came to his aid as she was looking to settle the score with Savage, her former apprentice. Now, I'll elaborate on this duel towards the end of this video, because I do have some criticisms of it, but without going into too much detail, if nothing else, I did enjoy it for its spectacle. Obi-Wan's sass, Ventress, trading lightsabers with him, and Maul's savagery and his quest for revenge all rolled into one. Now, with all that said, let's move on to Season 5.
I've been in countless battles and lost many brothers. They were my family, my home.
Now, Season 5, on the other hand, is much more of a mixed bag. The opening act is great, where Obi-Wan and Anakin offer their skills to rebels on a struggling planet, partially led by a young Saw Gerrera.
Save the dream!
But more primarily his sister. Due to Obi-Wan and the Jedi Council walking the fine line of helping freedom fighters or enabling terrorism, rather than fight the battle for them, they head to the planet to train the rebels to fend for themselves.
I'll take the left flank if you take the right.
No, Anakin, we can only protect them. We cannot fight this war for them.
And I can only protect you. I can't fight a war for you.
However, their Clone Wars duty calls them elsewhere eventually, and they are forced to leave sooner than intended, but they leave Ahsoka behind, who's adamant about staying and helping them to the best of her ability. Ahsoka is undoubtedly the main character of interest in Season 5. The majority of these episodes are dedicated to the most important part of her story thus far. It's during this arc that Ahsoka learns how important the Jedi are in resolving conflict, and how they can be doing so much more good, but their code is undoubtedly holding them back. And Ahsoka comes to learn this the longer she stays on Onderon, and the longer she's separated from the Jedi Order, and isn't constantly reinforced with their method of thinking. As she observes the rebels during their hard times, she's fighting a war on behalf of others that the Council does not deem important.
I take it the rebels have Dooku's full attention.
It's a full-scale war. Please talk to the Council.
The Council will not engage or involve the Republic in an internal affair.
The Separatists have a new gunship with a powerful ray shield. Nothing's getting past it.
I am sorry, Ahsoka. They will have to find a way. Do not stay there if their failure is certain. Evacuate who you can, and return to Coruscant immediately.
Battles of both wins and losses, and ultimately the loss of Saw Gerrera's sister, who Ahsoka had come to respect immensely. It was also in this season that I realized why some people are jaded at Dave Filoni, because even though a large portion of Season 5 is dedicated to Ahsoka, it seems like Dave Filoni just wanted to insert Ahsoka wherever and whenever he could.
I don't think it's a mystery that I've always been a bit more in the Ahsoka lives camp. And George has been very full on in the Ahsoka dies camp. I think I've said that before, if not revelation for you.
Case in point being the episode on Ilum and the Sacred Jedi Temple, where younglings select their Kyber crystals, meaning they can finally build their lightsabers. For some reason, it's Ahsoka that is the one to escort them to their destination and protect them. When their ship gets attacked by the pirate Hondu, that ultimately leads to Ahsoka and the younglings teaming up with the pirates to fend off General Grievous and the droid army. I didn't mind this arc, in fact I thoroughly enjoyed it, but realistically, Ahsoka had no business being on that trip. She was a Padawan learner. She was not a Jedi Knight, she was not a Jedi Master, so why wasn't Anakin or Obi-Wan or someone else who was wiser with more experience helping the younglings on their voyage to Ilum? I guess the argument could be made that the Jedi Knights had higher priorities. After all, Kenobi received the younglings' transmission while in space, being out on Clone Wars business. But hell, Yoda was on Ilum. So again, if they were able to spare Yoda for such a relatively small thing with an enormous responsibility, then why was Ahsoka escorting them? I have no idea. Okay, now we come to the droid arc. You guys know the one I'm talking about, and this was really, really, really weird. Fun to watch for a little bit, but this comedy parody of an arc went for 4 pissing long episodes, or in other words, it went just as long as the Umbara arc. That is ludicrous. It had its moments, don't get me wrong, with the Colonel learning how to lead and take responsibility for his troops, even though his troops are droids. Also, I did like the episode where they found a Republic commando out in the middle of nowhere who suffered amnesia. That was cool. It's very similar to the Deserter episode from Season 2, in that a clone trooper is stranded far away from the intergalactic conflict, the event that governs their sole purpose in life. They were bred for war and nothing else. So seeing this clone as a fish out of water, struggling to remember who he is, was very intriguing. And to find out that he's not only a clone trooper, but a Republic commando, one of the best trained soldiers in the entire Grand Army of the Republic, a title granted to only a very select few of the millions of trained clone soldiers, made Gregor's revelation that much more exciting.
You're telling me that there are more of these clones?
Millions. A whole army's worth.
And they all look exactly like me?
No. Those clones are warriors. We need to figure out who you really are, how you got here. Impressive. Gregor, your designation is CC 5576-39. You were a captain, part of an elite squad. A clone commando. Your file says you were reported missing in action during the Battle of Sarish.
Oh, Sarish. Yes. Yes, I remember now.
And not to mention the sheer salivatory fan service for a certain much beloved video game from the Lucas regime back in the early 2000s.
Yes, we do have a new mission. Stop the Separatists from blowing up that cruiser.
I'll cover you and clear the way, Colonel. You all head straight to the shuttle. I'll take care of those clankers.
But otherwise, the droid arc itself just keeps on dragging. And I felt immensely relieved when it was over. After losing a fight with Obi-Wan Kenobi while trying to start a criminal empire with Hondo and Anaka's crew of space pirates, Maul is found deep in space by our returning friends from Death Watch. Vizla notices that they have lightsabers but recognizes that they aren't friends of the Jedi. And looking for allies to his cause, curiosity gets the better of him, so Death Watch takes in Maul and Savage and restores them back to health. One thing I never understood, and this is absolutely a nitpick, but how come Darth Maul never got his chicken legs back? Like, those things were fucking brutal. Aw, now he looks all normal. Well, not really, but anyway, Darth Maul and Pre Vizsla have a sit down, and this is the episode that completely sold me on Darth Maul's return. He's not the same man he once was, but he was absolutely still the apprentice to Darth fucking Sidious himself, the greatest manipulator in the galaxy, and so Maul lets his training shine through and plays Death Watch like a fiddle.
We allied ourselves with Sith before. Count Dooku, he betrayed us. Sith are no better than Jedi. They claim to be powerful, but we put these two back together after the Jedi gutted them.
Doubt will only lead to failure. Hold! Our combined strength will be rewarded. Mandalore will be yours, and Kenobi, this Sith pretender Dooku, and all our enemies will fall.
Check on your brother. We'll put it to a vote.
Are we prisoners?
No. Allies. They have much to offer, including their planet. They are strong, and unlike pirates, they possess honor.
Another weakness.
They know nothing of our intentions. Those revelations will come too late.
Initiating an alliance with Vizsla and his men, it begins as a partnership, but slowly Darth Maul becomes the dominant leader of this new regime. Eminence is one of the best episodes in the series. We see Maul in one fell swoop manages to align Death Watch, a crime syndicate known as the Black Suns.
Very well then. It would seem the decision to join us is now yours.
After careful consideration, we will join you.
And Jabba the Hutt's clan all to his side for his
one singular vision. My vision. There is only one plan, one vision. Your vision lacks clarity. Without us, you have no army and no reason to replace the Duchess.
I'm curious to hear the rest of your plan.
The vision has expanded.
Oh yeah, and I don't know why, but I can't help it. I just love this part so much.
So the only thing that you can tell me is that I will find Jabba at Jabba's palace.
From the beginning, we know this partnership isn't going to last. Both Maul and Vizsla want control of Mandalore for different reasons. Vizsla simply wants to rule his homeland and restore its former glory, but for Maul, Mandalore is simply a means to an end to build his criminal empire and to finally take his revenge upon Kenobi. Maul's plan is brilliant. Use the crime lords and Savage to cause chaos on Mandalore, show the people why the Duchess's government and way of pacifism is flawed, and then have the Death Watch come to the aid of the people and drive off the criminals. This will sway the people of Mandalore against the Duchess, allowing the Death Watch to take control with the endorsement of the people.
You have learned from your previous oversights.
In the process, they quietly imprison the Duchess along with the rest of the criminal scum, Savage included, and once Vizsla has control, he double-crosses Maul, imprisoning him like all the rest, but Maul, being the mastermind that he is, has a brilliant backup plan. Rally another politician to his side to take control of Mandalore's government and exploit Mandalore's old customs and their code of honor to unseat Pre Vizsla from his newfound throne.
Vizsla has captured the support of his people, just as we planned. However, he is not their anointed leader yet. There is still time for us to put in place a leader under our control.
Then let us escape and we shall find one.
Patience. We must move cautiously. By placing us in prison, Vizsla has unwittingly put us in reach of several candidates for his successor.
Once Maul finds the corrupt candidate he's looking for, he makes his challenge. Now, I really like this duel, and I'll come back to explain as to why, but for now I'll just say again, Pre Vizsla is honorable, sort of, but But he's also a hypocrite when it suits him. He's challenged to a fair fight by Darth Maul, but he also uses other Mandalorian weaponry that Darth Maul does not possess to try and gain the upper hand. Ultimately, his efforts prove fruitless and Darth Maul comes out on top, delivering the killing blow. And in doing so, by the old custom claiming the right to rule Mandalore and possession of the dark saber. Now I can't be sure, but I'd imagine this is the first time in history that an outsider, an off-worlder in fact, has bested a Mandalorian leader for possession of the throne. Most of Vizla's men loyal to the Mandalorian code side with Maul, but this turn of events is so shocking and hard to swallow that Bo-Katan and her closest troops cannot accept this. They were loyal to Vizla, but above all else, they were loyal to the best interest of Mandalore's people, and Bo-Katan defies the code, declaring her former brothers in arms as traitors. And then Maul utters possibly the most badass fucking line in the entire series.
You're all traitors!
Unfortunately for you, history will not see it that way. Execute them!
And so Maul's new regime drives out Bo-Katan and her troops. Finally, we come to Lawless, the episode where Maul orchestrates a plan to use Duchess Satine's cries for help as a means to lure out Obi-Wan Kenobi. Realizing the now Mandalorian rebels would try to break her out of jail and that Mandalore, being a neutral system, would receive no official aid from the Senate or the Jedi Council for that matter.
Ironic.
So Kenobi would have to come alone to save his friend. See, this is why the politics are kind of important in Star Wars. Anyway, Kenobi shows up, falls right into Maul's trap, and Maul exacts his revenge in probably one of the hardest scenes to watch in the Clone Wars. I'm just gonna let it play.
I know where you're from. I've been to your village. I know the decision to join the dark side wasn't yours. The Night Sisters made it for you.
Silence! You think you know me? It was I who languished for years, thinking of nothing but you. Nothing but this moment. And now, the perfect tool for my vengeance is in front of us. I never planned on killing you, but I will make you share my pain, Kenobi.
Maul aimed straight for Kenobi's heart with this one, knowing Kenobi would have been tempted to lash out in anger and turn over to the dark side, or simply let himself crumble and be consumed by grief and misery. Satine's final words remind Kenobi of just how much she cherished him. Sadly, theirs was not a love meant to be. They were star-crossed lovers separated by duty and circumstance. Sound familiar?
We live in a real world. Come back to it. You're starting to become a Jedi. I'm a senator.
We could keep it a secret.
We'd be living a lie. One we couldn't keep even if we wanted to.
And while initially I said that Obi-Wan having a potential love interest does kind of mess with his character in the prequels, and I still stand by that to some degree, a friend of mine also explained to me how well Obi-Wan and Satine mirrored Anakin and Padme, and honestly I'm inclined to agree with her. And I love the way Lucasfilm handled Obi-Wan's reaction to Satine's death. I think it was handled very beautifully and very intelligently. As I said, Obi-Wan is a very by-the-books Jedi. He is a Jedi Master, and while he certainly had feelings for Satine, he was properly trained to conceal it, to deal with it, and to detach himself from it. We've seen what happens when a Jedi has a predisposition for attachment, and how without proper training they can turn to both hatred and violence in times of hysterical grief. Obi-Wan resisted and handled it like a true Jedi. But on the other hand, Maul is now at the height of his power. He has his crime syndicate, he possesses the dark saber and the throne of Mandalore, and he just exacted his revenge that he has waited over a decade for and has sent his most hated nemesis to languish in a prison cell. He is undoubtedly the most dangerous, feared, and ruthless force in the whole galaxy. Until later in that very episode, Darth fucking Sidious says, "Hold my beer," waltzes into Mandalore and bitch slaps his former apprentice. And I love how Maul, up until this point, hadn't exhibited anything close to fear, but just the mere name of Sidious is enough to make him shit his pants.
I sense a presence. A presence I haven't felt since Master.
You have become a rival!
The duel plays out, and once again, I'll come back to this a bit later, but Savage is killed after Sidious divides and conquers the Dathomir brothers, leaving Darth Maul to fend for himself, dueling with both his lightsaber and the Mandalorian darksaber. He comes close to beating Sidious, but ultimately fails. The last we see of Maul is him begging for mercy as Sidious tortures him with the Force. And personally, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I honestly felt kind of bad for Darth Maul to some degree. He's a heinous scumbag to be sure, but can you imagine how horrible it must have been to train under Sidious? I mean, the dude gets off electrocuting people. And Sam Witwer's screaming, ever to his credit, sold the shit out of that scene.
I'm not going to kill you. I have other uses for you.
Darth Maul had worked his way up, and just like that, Darth Maul is knocked off his pedestal and is once again a slave to Sidious's will.
It burns you to have come so close. To have power, unlimited power, and then to be reminded what real power is.
But anyway, we will come back to this, so let's move on. Now we come to the final part of Season 5, Ahsoka the Fugitive. And while I remember having some problems with this on my watch through in some instances, all in all I thoroughly enjoyed the story progression and character development of this arc. Although I found it very, very contrived that it was Ahsoka's best friend who was essentially the traitor to the Jedi Council and the one who betrayed Ahsoka specifically. It seemingly came out of nowhere and felt very much like a plot device. Now, despite there being no setup, I did enjoy her interaction with Anakin, and the reasoning she gave for turning against the Jedi when she revealed she possessed Ventress's lightsabers that ultimately proved Ahsoka's innocence. However, despite that, I still don't see why Barriss would frame Ahsoka of all people. After all, Ahsoka is meant to be Barriss's best friend, and they have a history together. And while Barriss's reasons for going against the Jedi Order are explained, her reasons for betraying Ahsoka specifically are not.
What's the truth?
A Jedi showed me how to create the bomb and how to put the nanodroids in.
Why would a Jedi do this?
There are some citizens of the Republic, like myself, who believe the Jedi Order is not what it used to be. The Jedi have become warmongers. They've become military weapons. And they're killing when they should be keeping the peace. One of these Jedi agreed with us. One of you wanted to make a statement and was willing to attack your own order to do it.
Letta, you have to tell me who is behind this.
It's...
Letta! Letta! Letta!
Prisoner health critical.
I don't know what happened.
Now, don't get me wrong, I think the Clone Wars did a fantastic job of building up the growing resentment of the galaxy towards the Jedi and the Republic for the war they are waging, and how it's causing the innocent to fall on hard times. The Jedi are no longer peacekeepers as they were always meant to be. They have become weaponized to essentially crush the uprising of the Separatist movement, and as a result of Jedi being sent to the front lines to do battle, they are neglecting the smaller disputes that require their attention elsewhere.
Do you believe what they said, Master? That a Jedi could do this?
Not every Jedi agrees with this war, Ahsoka. There are many political idealists among us.
Over the years in the Clone Wars, we've shown that there are groups of people that question what the Jedi are doing. Why are they fighting a war? The Lurmen do this. The Twi'lek Champs Dula does this. Satine does it. All these things kind of slowly setting up the idea that why are the Jedi fighting this war? And for the first time in the series, we show within the Republic a group of people protesting the Jedi Order, protesting the war. Why is this going on? Why hasn't it ended? Why did you create the clones? I thought it was great that George was willing to go that far and let us show maybe our heroes can't be painted with such a bright brush anymore. Maybe they have been compromised.
So I think the build-up to this arc was excellent. It's just that having Barriss as the culprit wasn't set up at all. It's like Dave Filoni, George Lucas, and Lucasfilm realized they'd reached this point in the story and needed to slap the blame on a character to instigate all this. And they decided on Barriss because it would have been the most emotionally hard-hitting, but they didn't earn the specific twist at all. They fundamentally changed Barriss out of nowhere.
I am here with evidence and a confession from the person responsible for all of the crimes Ahsoka has been accused of. Barriss Offee, member of the Jedi Order. Traitor.
Barriss? Is that true?
I did it because I have come to realize what many people in the Republic have come to realize. That the Jedi are the ones responsible for this war. That we've so lost our way that we have become villains in this conflict. That we are the ones that should be put on trial. All of us! And my attack on the temple was an attack on what the Jedi have become. An army fighting for the dark side. Fallen from the light that we once held so dear. This Republic is failing! It's only a matter of time.
This is blatant character assassination to push this plotline, because the showrunners need Ahsoka out of the picture for Revenge of the Sith, but Dave Filoni, as previously shown, was very much against simply killing Ahsoka off. Unfortunately, this was so easily fixable, and I can't take credit for this since it was actually a friend of mine who explained it to me, that Palpatine would have wanted Ahsoka out of the way eventually since he was grooming Anakin to become his apprentice. Ahsoka would undoubtedly complicate this. So why not have Palpatine use the mind worms to manipulate Barriss into framing Ahsoka, and have the plot play out exactly the same way, more or less? The showrunners could have achieved exactly what they wanted anyway without damaging any characters.
Mind control. Well, that explains a lot. Trap was my friend. He would never have tried to kill us.
Not to mention, this still benefits Palpatine politically if one of the Jedi's own sabotage the temple because they supposedly resent what the Clone Wars are turning the Jedi into. That's horrible PR for the Jedi, and would only help Palpatine's case for removing them from existence when the time comes for Order 66. And finally, using the mind worms to manipulate Barriss would have been an excellent callback for earlier in the Clone Wars series when Ahsoka saves Barriss from the mind worms while they're stranded in space. Perhaps Barriss could plead that her actions were not of her own will, and that she felt very similar to the experience with the mind worms back in Season 2, although she can't prove it. This would still render Barriss guilty in the eyes of the Republic and the Jedi Order, but not in the eyes of Ahsoka herself, having been the only one present aside from other clone troopers when the mind worms took over their space vessel. I could certainly see Ahsoka buying Barriss' story, but no one else. Anyway, Ahsoka's arc in Season 5 ultimately concludes when she realizes the limitations of the Jedi Order to do good in the universe, not to mention the feeling of hurt that she felt knowing the authority figures she trusted essentially turned against her, despite the fact that she followed their code to the letter. Ahsoka saw firsthand their glaring hypocrisy of how they conduct themselves. The Jedi way is to remain uncompromised, yet they sold her out to the Senate when it suited them, discarded any belief in her, and the only one who did believe in her innocence and tried to do the right thing was Anakin, her master.
You have our most humble apologies, little Ahsoka. The Council was wrong to accuse you.
You have shown such great strength and resilience in your struggle to prove your innocence.
This is the true sign of a Jedi Knight.
This was actually your great trial. Now we see that. We understand that the Force works in mysterious ways.
Anybody else's bullshit detector just go off?
They're asking you back, Ahsoka. I'm asking you back.
Season 5 ends with a heartfelt goodbye between Master and Apprentice, as Ahsoka opts not to return to the Jedi Order. She realizes she no longer believes she belongs there, and that there's more to the universe and she needs time to figure things out.
What about me? I believed in you. I stood by you.
I know you believe in me, Anakin, and I'm grateful for that. This isn't about you. I can't stay here any longer.
The Jedi Order is your life. You can't just throw it away like this. Ahsoka, you are making a mistake.
Maybe. But I have to sort this out on my own. Without the Council. And without you.
I understand wanting to walk away from the Order.
I know.
Having watched the Clone Wars in its entirety, this is the second to last time these two will meet as they are. However, initially this was written with the intent of just getting Ahsoka out of the way in preparation for Revenge of the Sith, and this was originally meant to be the final farewell between these characters until after the Clone Wars had ended. Though that didn't end up being the case, as Disney Lucasfilm decided to write Ahsoka back in for the final season. Some people have ill feelings towards this, saying that it nullifies the significance of Anakin and Ahsoka's farewell in Season 5, but personally, I think it's fine either way. Season 7 has its problems, but bringing Ahsoka back to meet Anakin one last time isn't one of them. But alas, we will talk about that soon enough. Just some final words on Season 5 before we move on. This season has a lot of excellent moments and great ideas littered throughout, but unfortunately most of them come with an asterisk of some kind. For example, the droid arc is fun and lighthearted, but it ultimately drags for way too long. The Younglings arc was creative and provided some excellent lore, but Ahsoka shouldn't have been the escort on that mission. Darth Maul probably has the best written arc in the entire season, but it also hijacks several plot lines in a very questionable manner in order to facilitate that. And finally, Ahsoka's fugitive arc was very intriguing and emotionally gripping, and there was certainly great writing throughout, but the arc itself was initiated by a ridiculous plot device, that being the assassinated character of Barriss, which makes the arc as a whole feel extremely contrived, especially when you understand the meta behind it, and the creative differences at Lucasfilm, ultimately concluding that Ahsoka needed to be removed but cannot die because they didn't want to pull the trigger on that. And this is why I say Season 5 is a mixed bag as opposed to the previous seasons in the Clone Wars. But it's still very much enjoyable and by no means the worst in the series.
How many times have you been sitting at home watching the show and you get kind of, hopefully, if I've done my job, worked into a nice emotional state, and then you're just smacked right out of it by that ring out? For years, I've been trying to get rid of it. Not on every episode, it's fine. But just on certain episodes, I thought this arc was the arc where it had to happen. And I knew it as soon as I read the scripts, and as soon as George sat down and we came up with the idea, I sat there and I thought to myself secretly, this episode's gonna fade out to black. I know George now. And I'm like, there's no way I can sell this to him when we watch it in a rough cut. It's not gonna happen. So when he watched the rough cut for the first time, I didn't put it on there. I knew that to sell this to him right, we needed the lighting, we needed the sky, we needed the full orchestration by Kevin Kiner. So when he watched it in color, that's when we faded out.
Good soldiers follow orders. Good soldiers follow orders. Good soldiers follow orders. Good soldiers follow orders. Good soldiers follow orders.
Now it's time for Season 6, and this season might be the messiest in the entire series. Let me make this clear, there are some great ideas in this season that sadly, for continuity's sake, tend to go too far in some places. It's a shorter season, so I'll try to keep this brief, but the first half of Season 6 follows one of my favourite clones, Fives, and it begins on one of Anakin's missions, as a rogue clone soldier goes mental and guns down a Jedi Knight in cold blood while she's off guard during the middle of a heated battle.
Jedi. Good soldiers follow orders.
Fives, I don't know what's going on, but you are responsible for Tuck now. Get him back to base. I want answers.
This results in Fives accompanying this clone soldier to the Camino facilities where clones are built and programmed from birth. Now, this clone is thought to have been caught with some kind of virus that made him delusional and ultimately killed his superior officer. And Fives is sent there because he may need to be quarantined if the virus is contagious. Fives then conducts his own investigation in an attempt to save his comrade's life. But what he discovers is so much bigger than he realizes. A conspiracy that implicates the Kaminoans, who planted an organic inhibitor chip that led his comrade to kill the Jedi General. Fives discovers his comrade's chip malfunctioned, but he also possesses one, and that every single clone trooper has one as well. This arc basically shows Fives fall further and further into the rabbit hole, not knowing where it ends, ultimately ending with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Fives knows he cannot prove what he knows, and it's strongly implied that Palpatine told him what was going to happen, so that Fives would attempt to take his life.
Perhaps it would be best if Clone Trooper Fives and I discussed this without your presence. I want this soldier to feel he is having a fair say in this matter. Now, where were we? He tried to kill me. It was so sudden.
Making Fives look even more crazy than he actually did, and branding him a fugitive. Fives' dying moments are spent trying to convince his general, Anakin Skywalker, and his captain, Rex, of the plot he's uncovered, divulging as much information as he could to his two highly skeptical friends before meeting a tragic and untimely death.
No, stay back! Don't do it, soldier! Get away from me!
No! Guys, get this ray shield off!
Fives. Brother. Rex. Fives. It's bigger than any of us. Than anything I could have imagined. I only wanted to do my duty. Brother. Fives. Stay with me, Fives. Fives. The mission. The nightmares. They're finally over.
This was easily the best arc of Season 6, but I'm honestly mixed on it. On one hand, it makes a lot more sense that the clones were oblivious to Order 66 right up until it was carried out, and the fact that the way that they could only carry out cold-blooded murder on their friends was through the programming in their brains from birth also makes more sense for enabling them to cast their loyalties aside so easily. However, on the other hand, this does fly in the face of some canon. In the prequels, we don't get too much on the clones as people, but the Kaminoans make it very clear that the clones were programmed from birth to be completely obedient to their superiors, meaning that they would obey the Jedi as superiors, but without hesitation would obey the Supreme Chancellor since he was their ultimate superior.
They are totally obedient, taking any order without question. We modified their genetic structure to make them less independent than the original host.
Not to mention, in some external canon, such as the OG Battlefront 2, Tamara Morrison's audio accounts of the 501st during the rise of the Empire depicts the clones as soldiers who were well aware of what was to come, and were filled with regret and self-loathing at what they were tasked to do, but what was their duty nonetheless.
What I remember about the rise of the Empire is how quiet it was. During the waning hours of the Clone Wars, the 501st Legion was discreetly transferred back to Coruscant. It was a silent trip. We all knew what was about to happen, what we're about to do. Did we have any doubts? Any private, traitorous thoughts? Perhaps, but no one said a word. Not on the flight to Coruscant, not when Order 66 came down, and not when we marched into the Jedi Temple. Not a word.
Now, admittedly, external canon from video games isn't a hill I'm willing to die on when it comes to canon consistency. Let's be frank, the Clone Wars has much more importance to the saga than a single video game. Now, it is my policy that authenticity should determine canon, and I'd say the Clone Wars are far more authentic to Star Wars, since George Lucas was much more involved in the production, but that aside, from a purely objective perspective, I find the Clone Wars canon pertaining to the clone engineering and Order 66 to be much more free of potential holes than if the clones knew about Order 66 beforehand. My bigger issues with Season 6, however, pertain to the syfo dyas arc and the Yoda arc. But before we move on to that, I want to very briefly give my thoughts on the Rush Clovis arc.
Hate, 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 double hate.
Though admittedly, Season 6 earned massive points for allowing us to see Anakin beat the shit out of Clovis, much like Endgame earned points by giving us the gratifying sight of watching Thanos knock the shit out of Captain Marvel. And as for the two-part episode arc, The Disappeared, I honestly rather enjoyed it. It's another light-hearted arc, a very light-hearted arc, that pits an unlikely duo together, that being Jedi Master Mace Windu and Jar Jar the Mad Lad Binks. It's a relatively inconsequential arc that, while goofy and ludicrous at times, doesn't really damage anything, and there are rather enjoyable and hilarious moments. To sum it up, basically Jar Jar shacks up with the Queen of Another Civilization, L.A.D., and Mace Windu finally vanquishes Mother Talisman of the Night Sisters in a duel that serves as the climax to the arc. See, if the droid arc in Season 5 was this short and concise, I'm sure we would have all enjoyed it that much more as well. But now, let's move on to the episode The Lost One. And it's here that Season 6 takes a complete nosedive. This episode starts off with Jedi Master Plo Koon tracing a distress signal to a long-lost ship carrying the lightsaber of Jedi Master Syfo Dyas. And this leads to the Jedi Council once again launching inquiries into his death. The first problem we have is early on, where the Jedi dive into the archives to find that the files surrounding the body recovery of Syfo Dyas has been locked off by the Office of the Supreme Chancellor. Now, I don't have too big an issue with this, since they were still missing a piece of the puzzle without the wreckage of Syfo Dyas' ship, as well as the recovery of his lightsaber, and they still likely wouldn't have been able to piece all the puzzle together without those things. But if the Chancellor's office sealed off the files, why the hell didn't they pursue this thread sooner? Like, shouldn't they have known this when Syfo Dyas' death happened? Wouldn't they have seen this immediately after they discovered the clones and relaunched inquiries then? And this would have led them to the former Chancellor Valorum, which would have led them to Obadiah and the Pikes much sooner in the war. But now we have to dial back to Attack of the Clones to address some very blatant continuity errors.
Master Syfo Dyas was killed almost 10 years ago.
Yes, Master. They say Master Syfo Dyas placed an order for a clone army at the request of the Senate almost 10 years ago. I was under the impression he was killed before that. Did the Council ever authorize the creation of a clone army?
No. Whoever placed that order did not have the authorization of the Jedi Council.
Now, in the prequels, the mystery of the clone army's creation was vague but simple. Syfo Dyas was a member of the Jedi Council. Shortly after Palpatine was appointed Chancellor, he ordered the creation of the clones on behalf of the Jedi Council for the Republic. Syfo Dyas was then killed soon after that, because he was a loose thread by whom it doesn't really matter, and it was Dooku, under the alias of Tyrannus, who appointed Jango Fett as the DNA subject to base the clone army off of.
I was recruited by a man called Tyrannus on one of the moons of Bogdan.
Curious.
Presumably due to Jango having good genetics, one would imagine, since he is a revered bounty hunter after all. And all of this was done under the order of Darth Sidious, soon after he came into power. Like I said, simple, but vague, since it's meant to be a mystery for the most part, and George Lucas has even said as much. However, the Clone Wars would have you believe that Syfo Dyas did this before Chancellor Palpatine came into power, and his final mission was given to him by the previous Chancellor, and Dooku ordered the Pikes to eliminate him while Syfo Dyas was en route to Felucia for an emergency mission, which is why his ship was found on Obadiah's moon.
I do remember that the talks were postponed not long after our delegates arrived on Obadiah. Something about a flare-up of activity on Felucia.
Yes, intervene on Felucia. The Council insisted Syfo Dyas did. But tell me, Chancellor, who was the other Jedi you sent with Syfo Dyas?
Other Jedi? I know of no other Jedi. There was only my personal aide, Silman, and Syfo Dyas. I'm afraid they were both killed on Felucia.
Personal aide?
Master Syfo Dyas' ship was found. Crashed on a moon orbiting this world.
What you found, we know nothing of. Is the Jedi looking for a Jedi Master or someone else?
Stop playing games! Syfo Dyas was traveling with an advisor. They were sent here to negotiate with you.
Or Dooku killed Syfo Dyas, taking his name, and ordered the clone army himself, simply recruiting Jango Fett under a different name.
Syfo Dyas understood. He saw the future. That is why he helped me.
But how could he help you if you wanted to assume his identity after killing him?
Who was responsible?
Someone powerful. Someone who wanted to be Syfo Dyas.
It's a goddamn mess. Some people thought it was confusing before. I had very little trouble piecing the gist of it together with the prequels, and now it's just all over the fucking place. Did Tyrannus assume Syfo Dyas' identity? Did Syfo Dyas order the clone army himself? How did he do this if the Clone Wars say he died under Valorum's rule and not Palpatine's, despite the fact that Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones says the order was placed after Palpatine's rule?
Master Syfo Dyas was killed almost 10 years ago.
And how could Syfo Dyas have helped Dooku in that time period if he died before the order was made according to the Clone Wars? I will say I did appreciate the detail that Syfo Dyas was pushing for a militarized republic during his final days on the Jedi Council, which would provide credibility to his motives in the eyes of the Jedi that he was the one to commission the clones on their behalf.
Prior to the blockade of Naboo, Syfo Dyas sat on this council until we judged his ideas to be too extreme.
Indeed. He said he foresaw great conflict, and that the Republic would need to raise an army. At the time, the Council rejected those ideas.
Well, it's not the first time we've been wrong recently, is it?
But undoubtedly, the biggest sin this fucking aneurysm of an episode makes is this.
You have no business left with the Pikes Tyrannus.
Tyrannus? You are the man called Tyrannus?
I was recruited by a man called Tyrannus on one of the moons of Bogdan.
What the actual ludicrous fuck? Are you out of your minds, Lucasfilm? Do you know what you just did? Do you know what fucking repercussions this has for Revenge of the Sith? If Clone Wars canon is to be believed, the Jedi knew that the Sith created the clones and orchestrated the Clone Wars from the fucking beginning. Do you realize how that fucking makes the Jedi look? The secrecy of the plot and the distraction of the Clone Wars and the element of surprise is what gave Palpatine's plan its credibility in the eyes of the audience. But with this new, very contradictory canon, we're to believe the Jedi figured it out and that they took little to no precautions in order to protect themselves from the Sith. They remained vulnerable to whatever plan they had in place. Now, I do like that the Jedi at least weighed up the possibility of the Sith controlling the clones, where they take a moment to ponder their experiences with them.
Valiant men the clones have proven to be. Saved my life and yours. They have many times. Believe in them. We must. Win the war swiftly. We must.
The clones have been loyal to a fault up until that point, so there was no reason to doubt them. Well, except for the very first episode of Season 6 where a clone gunned down a Jedi Knight in cold blood. That was swept under the rug as a simple malfunction due to a virus, true, but then you have Fives going berserk and almost killing the Chancellor, which I suppose further absolves Palpatine from being a suspect, but Fives still attacked a Republic official, meaning in the eyes of the Jedi, the clones aren't all safe, are they? At least the Jedi didn't know about the inhibitor chips, I suppose. I guess that's the one saving grace from this mess. But goddamn, there's just so much wrong with them knowing who Tyrannus is. The point I'm trying to outline is that this episode and its plot threads should not have been explored or existed in the Clone Wars. It was perfectly fine the way it was in the prequels. And while trying to answer the questions for some overly demanding fans, these writers have instead only created a shit ton more questions. If I had to outline some positives of this episode, it's the duel between Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Dooku, which was pretty fire, I'm not gonna lie. I did enjoy the additional world building of the Pike clan and their spice trade, adding to the crime rates in Coruscant's underworld, something that does get revisited in Season 7, I might add. Also, during the duel with Count Dooku, it features some of the best animation in the series up till this point, and arguably one of the best uses of Kevin Kiner's original score. And I do appreciate this line from Dooku in the midst of the duel.
I told you everything you needed to know on Geonosis all those years ago, Kenobi. You should have joined me.
It's just a shame they couldn't have used that line under different circumstances that doesn't blatantly contradict canon. If I was to do this arc, I would have begun the episode with the duel of Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Dooku, and seeing Dooku escape with an item that could have possibly linked him to the creation of the clones. He could have uttered that same line to Obi-Wan as he flees, and then while his ship is escaping, there could have been a flashback sequence with Dooku and Syfo Dyas that could have explained what this arc tried to do, except it would have been done much clearer and without error. Not only that, but it would have been nice to get a deeper dive into Dooku's perspective on the war, on the clones, and on Sidious himself. And bear in mind, this is only if the arc had to take place, when it honestly should have just been left alone. But hey, at least the Jedi still haven't encountered Darth Sidious as of yet, and his existence for the most part still remains a mystery to them. Right?
Do you believe what Count Dooku said about Sidious controlling the Senate? It doesn't feel right.
Join the dark side. Dooku has. Lies, deceit. Creating mistrust are his ways now.
Until the final arc of Season 6, where things go even more to shit. The Yoda arc begins when the Jedi Master receives a message from beyond the grave from OG Qui-Gon Jinn, voiced by Liam Neeson himself, I might add.
Yoda.
Hear you, I do. Who are you?
It is I, Qui-Gon Jinn.
That cannot be. Dead you are.
And while that's fucking fantastic, let's start explaining why this makes little to no sense. Firstly, we have yet another continuity error. In Attack of the Clones, while Yoda is meditating in the temple and sensing Anakin's distraught mental state from across the galaxy, we hear this.
Anakin! Anakin!
Which would lead us to believe that Yoda has been in contact with Qui-Gon Jinn before. However, in the Clone Wars, it's treated as if Yoda is encountering Qui-Gon's voice for the first time. Anyway, this development troubles Yoda, who even questions Anakin about the Mortis arc since he had encountered Qui-Gon's ghost in the past. Thankfully, Anakin insists that he could have just been dreaming the whole thing, keeping that arc relatively ambiguous as it was meant to be. After further meditation, Qui-Gon tells Yoda to head to the Dagobah system for the answers he seeks. Now, before I continue, there are some parts of this episode which I do like. I love the camaraderie between Yoda and Anakin, Yoda requesting his help in escaping the temple unseen, specifically because Anakin is so good at breaking the rules.
You asked for me, Master?
Yes. Friends we are, hmm?
Of course.
A choice you must make. Worried for you I am.
Why is that?
Do something for me, you must. Blamed you will be.
The Council will not want you to travel at all. Alone, even less.
Disobeying the Council, your expertise is. That is why I ask for your help. It is the spontaneity you find so easily, which others do not.
Where's Master Yoda? What have you done?
Hey, for once none of this was my idea.
Although the fact that Yoda brings R2-D2 along for this journey also raises questions about their reunion in Empire Strikes Back. I can understand Yoda perhaps forgetting R2, but not the other way around. Moving on, I also liked that one of the reasons Yoda had to go to the Dagobah system to hear Qui-Gon more clearly is because of how strong in the Force Dagobah is.
Strong this planet is with the Force.
It is one of the purest places in the galaxy.
Also, the explanation of different Force realms linked to one another I actually thought was pretty cool. The living Force is distinguished from the cosmic Force, the plane of existence where Force ghosts can exist.
All energy from the living Force, from all things that have ever lived, feeds into the cosmic Force, binding everything and communicating to us through the midichlorians.
We also get another explanation of why Qui-Gon was never able to visually manifest his spirit like Yoda and Kenobi eventually do. Qui-Gon says this is because he was never able to complete his training. We will come back to that point a bit later, but the fact that substantial training is needed to manifest their consciousness in the Force after death does call into question Anakin's Force ghost at the end of Return of the Jedi, but that I'm willing to concede was a small error with the movies, and the Clone Wars simply expanded on it. But here is where we get to the ridiculous problems. Number 1, Yoda's vision. Yoda receives a cave vision that pretty much whacks him over the head with a hammer, showing him, hey, stupid, guess what? Order 66 is coming.
Do you live in a cave?
And this comes so soon after the bafflingly stupid Syfo Dyas arc that busted that mystery wide open. Number 2, the trials of the cosmic Force beings. Yoda leaves Dagobah and travels to a place Qui-Gon spoke of to complete the training he could not. It's an aesthetically pleasing planet that acts as somewhat of a conduit between the living realm of the Force and the cosmic realm. Yoda travels inside to complete the trials laid out for him by these cosmic Force priestesses. The first trial is Yoda confronting his dark side self, which I'll admit was pretty cool, very entertaining. The second is that Yoda has to face his darkest nightmares that show the entire Jedi Temple slaughtered and desecrated, which oddly includes a vision of dying Ahsoka, which I'll admit was Pretty cool that she was able to receive some sort of a cameo in this. And then Yoda is then shown his greatest hopes, and he is revealed a perfectly tranquil Jedi temple consisting of all his Jedi friends, both past and present, including the long-dead Qui-Gon Jinn and even Yoda's former apprentice, now turned Sith Lord, Count Dooku. Yoda's trial is, rather than succumb to the seduction of the illusion, Yoda needs to reject it as a falsehood and return to reality. Right, let's review. I am fine with Yoda undertaking this series of trials in theory. I am fine with him being trained by these cosmic force entities in theory. But if Lucasfilm is expecting me to believe that all of this cosmic force planet stuff existed right under the Jedi's noses for however many millenniums without them knowing, and that Qui-Gon Jinn was the one Jedi who was somehow subjected to all of this knowledge and all of these trials prior to the Phantom Menace, yeah, I'm going to call bullshit on that. I was relatively on board with this arc right up until Yoda got to Dagobah. From then on, this just gets balls out insane. Again, I'll provide my 2 cents about how I think this could have worked. Once Yoda gets to Dagobah, just have Qui-Gon Jinn guide him to connect to these Force beings within his mind. Just have all of Yoda's trials take place on Dagobah inside his own mind. This would add to the significance and importance of Dagobah, and will certainly add a lot of substance to Luke's journey in the original trilogy, and this removes the suspension of disbelief for all of this lunacy surrounding Qui-Gon and the Cosmic Witches prior to the Phantom Menace. But unfortunately, the worst is yet to come. For Yoda's final trial, the Cosmic Witches send him to the ancient homeworld of the Sith, Moraband. Wait, hang on, Moraband. The fuck? Have these writers ever heard of Korriban? Did no one on the Clone Wars Lucasfilm staff play Star Wars Jedi Academy? And then, where to begin? Yoda is subject to a series of visions where he encounters a Sith snake that tries to eat him, and then he comes across the ghost of Darth Bane, who, fun fact, was voiced by Mark Hamill of all people. And then, god damn it, the Cosmic Witches appear, telling Yoda that they brought him here because they knew at this exact moment in time that the Sith of his time would try to reach out to him and try to break him. And this isn't a vision, mind you. Dooku and Sidious are actually trying some weird Sith ritual that enables them to bring Yoda's mind into an illusion of their own making. All of a sudden, Yoda is back on Coruscant, joining Anakin of all people on a mission to the Sith Temple on Coruscant, where Dooku and Sidious are conducting this ritual, except now it is actually a dream, even though they are also doing this in reality. If your brain is scrambled egg at this point, I don't blame you, because I don't know what the fuck is going on either. Above all else, Yoda's vision/not vision includes him witnessing Anakin killing Dooku in the same manner as Revenge of the Sith, while Yoda himself has a duel with motherfucking Darth Sidious himself. In the prequels, it was excused that the Jedi couldn't identify who Sidious was because they didn't really know if he actually existed, and he was so cunning and so knowledgeable with the dark side that he could hide in plain sight, right in front of them. As for Sidious's cloak, it was enough to show us the audience who his identity was, but not the characters in the universe. Not that that matters anyway, because again, none of the Jedi ever saw Sidious in character. But here, Yoda is speaking and fighting against Darth Sidious, who he now knows with absolute fucking certainty absolutely exists, and you're telling me with this new canon that Yoda still can't figure out that Darth Sidious is Chancellor Palpatine? Go fuck yourselves. That is beyond ridiculous. Sure, the duel is cool enough, but why did this have to happen? And I enjoyed the concept of Yoda having to sacrifice himself if need be to defeat Sidious and save everyone else as a trial. That was cool. Again, only in theory, but it absolutely should have been achieved by different means. So Yoda completes his training, and there's one more scene at the Jedi Temple where Windu and Kenobi ask Yoda about his journey, and Yoda basically tells them the Clone Wars is merely a footnote in what's a larger grand design, and they shouldn't be focused on winning the Clone Wars, but rather winning for all time. These final 4 episodes of Season 6, while again possessing good ideas, completely fuck up continuity with the rest of the Star Wars saga. Syfo Dyas is no longer a mystery. The Jedi know who Tyrannus is prior to Revenge of the Sith. Qui-Gon Jinn apparently conducted all these hidden trials prior to the Phantom Menace. Yoda sees visions of Order 66 and of Darth Sidious prior to Revenge of the Sith, and he is even told by the Cosmic Priestesses, quote, "There is another Skywalker." What the fuck? They turned Yoda from simply being a wise Jedi Grand Master into some sort of prophesized component in the wars to come. These episodes essentially tell Yoda everything he needs to know for what's going to happen, and makes Yoda's shock and devastation look absolutely laughable in retrospect if this canon is to be taken seriously. Personally, this is so bad that I have to blot it out of my memory when watching the Clone Wars. This was the equivalent of the World Between Worlds episode in Star Wars Rebels, written with caution thrown to the absolute fucking wind. I can believe these concepts came straight from George Lucas, because the concepts in the Yoda arc are indeed good concepts, but the writing feels like the person in charge of the production was almost completely oblivious to the rest of the series, which leads me to wonder just what the hell happened with Season 6.
Take a second off. Can you turn the volume up? Yeah. Well, because you're sitting back there in the peanut gallery? You demand to hear what's going on? I quit. I can't take this anymore. Okay.
Before we move on to the final season, there is something important we need to discuss. Why is Season 6 such a mess? Why did it end up, in my opinion, as the worst Clone Wars season? Well, unfortunately, research on this has been quite limited ever since a certain corporate juggernaut purchased the Star Wars franchise back in 2012. Funny how the Clone Wars, and in fact Lucasfilm as a whole prior to 2012, was very open about its behind-the-scenes productions, open to showing both its triumphs and its faults, to give fans an honest look at the creative side behind the curtain of the franchise they loved. But with Disney, nothing. No featurettes, and barely any interviews about what happened with the creative team and the direction of the Clone Wars after October 30th, 2012. Since Disney is always focused on trying to maintain its squeaky clean image that virtually nobody buys at this point, basically production on the Clone Wars was scrapped so that Disney could essentially focus on content pertaining to the original Star Wars trilogy, since through the eyes of Disney corporate figureheads, that was seen as the ultimate nostalgia-milking cash cow of the franchise. I mean, they weren't exactly wrong about that at the time, but still, to completely divorce the franchise from the prequels and its related content, brain dead considering they are managing this franchise and know how beloved that era is and how big of a fan base it possesses, and above all else, just fucking insulting to ignore those fans and pander to a minority of Star Wars fanatics that grew to hate the franchise creator, which was one of the big reasons Lucas stepped away, remember? As for the amount of creative involvement George Lucas had in the Clone Wars around the time of the Disney purchase, well, that's, like I said, a very messy topic when it comes to Season 6. Very limited information exists, but I'll read you this excerpt from Wikipedia verbatim just to loosely timeline it for you guys, and then I'll elaborate. It says, behind the scenes, Season 6 was first officially announced by Dave Filoni in the Star Wars Insider magazine, though head writer Christian Taylor stated in September 2011 that they had already written through the season. Because of the October 2012 acquisition of Lucasfilm Ltd by the Walt Disney Company, the Clone Wars ended its contract with Cartoon Network, and no information regarding Season 6 was released until news came on StarWars.com on March 11th, 2013, which stated that no more seasons would air, but individual Clone Wars arcs would be produced as a proper finale to the series, which they only named bonus content. Initially, it was confirmed that the bonus content would consist of two story arcs, one pertaining to Rush Clovis, originally set for Season 5, and the other pertaining to the clone trooper Tup killing a Jedi General under mysterious circumstances. It was later announced by the release of another clip that a third arc would be among the content, delving into the mystery of Jedi Master Syfo Dyas, and afterwards an arc pertaining to Yoda was announced. But an interview with Tom Kane stated that the Yoda preview and Syfo Dyas preview were on the same arc. At the Star Wars Celebration second convention in Essen, Germany from July 26 to July 28, 2013, Dave Filoni and artist Pablo Hidalgo hinted at a fourth bounty hunter story arc to be released as well, which would show the fates of the likes of Boba Fett, Cad Bane, and Ura Singh. However, this arc ultimately did not appear in the season. Scattered reports state that this story was not released due to continuity conflicts with upcoming films. But on October 11th, 2013, Dave Filoni announced on his Facebook page that production for all remaining The Clone Wars episodes had finished, and they would all be released, possibly on television, sometime in early 2014. The content was rumored to be released on Apple TV. Filoni also announced that a 4-part episode arc from Season 6 would be adapted into a comic titled Star Wars, Darth Maul, the Son of Dathomir. On January 16th, 2014, Super RTL, a television network in Germany, announced that it would be airing the Season 6 episodes on Saturdays, starting on February 15th. On February 13th, Lucasfilm announced that Season 6, along with all seasons prior and the feature film, would be available on Netflix from March 7th, 2014, under the name of The Lost Missions. So apparently, over a year prior to the sale of Lucasfilm in 2012, the team had written the entirety of Season 6, and apparently when the show was cancelled in March 2013, just 5 months after the Disney purchase, they had already completed 13 episodes according to this clip from Dave Filoni.
It's not over yet. In fact, the best is yet to come. We have some of the most exciting, most important story arcs still coming your way. Now, what could there be left to tell? Well, as diehard fans of the series, you know there are still some gaps in there, things that are really crucial to the overall story arc of the Star Wars universe that we need to finish off and tell you. They are the best episodes that my crew has ever committed to screen. In fact, if you watch this clip, you'll know what points in the story I'm talking about, and you will want to know more.
Don't fall back! Push forward!
But they only showed the first episode of Season 6, which again leads me to my skepticism of just how much was finished by March 2013. George Lucas was already gone by this point, but apparently the scripts were already completed, and supposedly there were 52 written but incomplete episodes of The Clone Wars yet to be made. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that some of these episodes never saw the light of day, particularly the Cad Bane and Boba Fett arc, since Cad Bane goes out in such a bitch way, but others like the Son of Dathomir arc with Darth Maul and Count fucking Dooku got relegated to a comic series, but at the same time, Lucasfilm and Dave Filoni chose to finish the Rush Clovis arc instead of showing us a confrontation between Darth Maul and Count Dooku, which is particularly important, especially in retrospect when you account for Season 7, more on that soon, but holy crap, what were they thinking? Who's responsible for this? But rather than speculate about whose fault it is for what we didn't get, how about we focus on who's responsible for what did happen, rather than what didn't? Who's responsible for the last 4 episodes of Season 6 going massively off the deep end? Now, Christian Taylor said that the Season 6 script was completed prior to October 30th, 2012. Christian Taylor is also responsible for writing all of the bad episodes of Season 6, the Clovis arc, the Syfo Dyas arc, and the Yoda arc. The Clone Wars was cancelled 5 months after the Disney sale, and you'll also notice that George Lucas is absent pretty much from all photography of the Lucasfilm team working on the Clone Wars in later documentaries up to that point.
I love making the show. My crew is so dedicated to making the show. We are still fans to this day. You know, the sadness for me isn't some of the people that I've left that I worked for a long time, but they've gone on. Many of them are doing incredible things elsewhere. And so I'm excited and proud of them working with what they're doing now. And the people that are still here are still doing great things. And I see that they took the lessons they learned on Clone Wars and that they're still moving forward and making Star Wars true to what it is. That's what that team of people offers. And I hope to be doing it for a long, long time in this galaxy right now and in the future.
Dave Filoni, as shown, announced that the Clone Wars would be wrapping up production because of Disney turning its focus elsewhere, and it took a whole damn year for the supposed already completed 13 episodes of the Clone Wars to be publicly released on Netflix, which I refuse to believe was due to licensing issues, since Disney obviously wanted their newly acquired IP off their competitor Cartoon Network as fast as possible. So what exactly happened during the Clone Wars production in the first 5 months since the Lucasfilm sale? Season 5 hadn't even finished premiering at the time, and Dave Filoni mentions that George Lucas was present for Season 5, like he had to sell Lucas on the Fade to Black closeout for the Season 5 finale, which must have happened midway or early in 2012. So George was still pretty active in the production up to that point, and I'm willing to believe that he at least helped draft Season 6, but I refuse to believe, unless it comes out of Lucas's own mouth, that he signed off and supervised the finished product of episodes 10 to 13 of the Clone Wars Season 6, particularly the the Syfo Dyas episode, largely because of the continuity errors and the fact that George himself on the Attack of the Clones audio commentary said that the creation of the clones was largely meant to be a mystery for the audience, and that he left enough pieces on the board for the audience to loosely piece it together themselves. And I certainly don't think he meant to go into as much detail as the Clone Wars Season 6 ended up doing in the final product. Also, in January 2013, George Lucas announced his engagement to his current wife, Melody Hobson, who he married in June of that year, so I'd like to think that George had moved on from all of the creative and consulting duties at Lucasfilm by that point, leaving Christian Taylor to essentially do whatever the hell he wanted. Also, it's worth noting that Christian Taylor also worked heavily with Dave Filoni on the Mortis arc, which we've discussed in length already, and George Lucas did sign off on that finished product, but unlike the Mortis arc, George kinda wasn't around for the latter half of production for Season 6. The Mortis arc was relatively tame and ambiguous and inconsequential, unlike the Syfo Dyas and Yoda arcs, which are not kept ambiguous, were certainly not tame, and absolutely were consequential. People often criticize George for not being kept in check creatively, which for the most part I disagree with, but in this case I think it's the reverse. And without the influence of George Lucas to helm production, Christian Taylor and Dave Filoni weren't kept in check when they absolutely should have been. The writing's on the wall with this one. In addition to the Disney corpos fucking up and cancelling production, once George Lucas had sold the franchise and possibly weeks prior to that, I think it's safe to say he was creatively done with Star Wars. I honestly can't imagine him being very involved in the weeks prior to that if he had been contemplating selling the franchise for some time, which he has gone on record saying he was. And due to the persistent internet backlash he was receiving in the early days of YouTube, I'm willing to believe he was quite apathetic during his final months at Lucasfilm. And as a result, he left the creative process of the Clone Wars, and particularly story ideas, in the hands of writers that didn't earn it, and were playing with ideas and concepts they didn't fully understand. I know that's kinda rich coming from a fan towards the likes of Dave Filoni, who was probably the closest creative mind to George Lucas, and probably still is, but I honestly just don't know who else to lay the blame on, really. The final episodes of Season 6 were and are easily some of the worst episodes in the series, and for a while that threatened to be the final hurrah for the Clone Wars and its long legacy. So after all that, the Clone Wars was dead in the water and left behind a massive fan base who prayed long and hard for years and years, praying for its return and that one day it would finally be finished.
Execute Order 66.
Yes, Lord Sidious.
Now let's talk about the final season of the Clone Wars, a season which has been somewhat divisive amongst the fandom since it released. The general consensus is that the first two arcs were unnecessarily pointless and nothing but filler episodes, and the finale itself is god tier. I gotta say, I disagree with this somewhat. Remember, this is the first time that fans have had new Clone Wars content for 7 years, which is longer than the original run of the show. Dave Filoni wanted to reintroduce us to a familiar setting, give us some of that classic Clone Wars adventure from classic characters we know and love. And so we are given Anakin and Rex's assignment with the Bad Batch, a squad of clone troopers who are somewhat different in each of their own unique ways from what they call the Regs, aka regular clone trooper soldiers. We find Captain Rex towards the end of the war lamenting the loss of so many of his fallen brothers in arms.
Fives. Echo. Before that, Heavy. There's so many troopers. Gone. Yeah. Regular folk don't understand. Sometimes in war, it's hard to be the one that survives. That's what I'm worried about. Well, what is it? I think Echo's alive. That's not possible. He died at the Citadel. The way the droids are countering us here, the strategies I'm using, they're all old battle plans Echo and I drew up together. Look, Rex, I hear what you're saying, but it's just not possible. I hope you're right.
Little did Rex know he was about to get one of those brothers back from the dead. They go on an adventure to save their long-lost brother-in-arms, Echo, who is admittedly a very small retcon. Ultimately, Echo is saved, and because he isn't quite like the other clones anymore, the Bad Batch welcomes him with open arms, and Rex says his farewells, allowing Echo to find his place in the Republic Army once again. Also, I think the Bad Batch is an excellent reference and callback to Clone Trooper 99.
Experimental Unit Clone Force 99. The defective clones with, desirable mutations. 99, eh? Huh, nice touch. They call themselves the Bad Batch.
The Bad Batch aren't shy about what makes them different. In an army of millions of clones, unique troopers are scarce, and their mutations give each of them a particular strength not found in other clone troopers. And I like the fact that they wear their heart on their sleeves, with what makes them different. The majority of the arc is Rex and Jesse, two of the 501st's best troopers, learning to coexist on assignment with members of the Bad Batch that are, shall we say, not the most professional soldiers. They don't exactly do things by the book, but they always get the job done in their own way. This arc was Dave Filoni showing General Skywalker leading his troops into battle one last time before the Clone Wars finale, and I really appreciated this return to form.
Still showing off, huh, General?
You know me, Echo.
That seemed to work. How do we get up there? No, not again!
However, there is one pretty major fuck up that I cannot stand in this arc. Roll the footage.
I love you, Annie.
I love you too.
I hope you at least told Padme I said hello.
I do not know where the Emperor has sent him. I don't know where to look.
I hope you at least told Padme I said hello.
Anakin is the father, isn't he?
I hope you at least told Padme I said hello.
I trust I don't have to explain why this is another huge middle finger to the continuity of the prequels. Look, it's a bad moment, but it doesn't destroy the Bad Batch arc by any means. It just makes me question just who the hell is writing the show, however, because there's so many moments of great writing in it. But then there are moments like this where you facepalm because you cannot believe the stupidity that same writer decided to put in that very same episode. Anyway, let's move on. Now for the Martinez sisters arc. Wow, what an insufferable drag. Initially, I forced myself to think higher of this arc than I probably should have. I do think there's somewhat of a character through line with the arc, so it isn't entirely pointless. It turns out the sisters hate Jedi because a Jedi Master long ago was responsible for accidentally killing their parents while pursuing Jabba the Hutt's brother Xena while he was escaping Coruscant.
The alien protecting Zero blasted the engine of an ascending cargo transport. The ship went spiraling out of control. The Jedi went into action, tried to gain control of the ship. There was a populated landing platform right in the path of the ship, but the Jedi steered it clear of that, right into the portal wall. And on the other side of that wall was our home.
Mom and Dad saw it coming. They got Rafa and I out. They weren't so lucky.
She looked at me, and you know what she said? She said, I had to make a choice, but not to worry. The Force will be with you. That's it. Then she was off.
But wow, is it chock full of nonsense. I almost rage quit the season when the younger Martinez sister intentionally dumped the spice because she thought that would solve all their problems, which might possibly have been the dumbest moment in the entire Clone Wars series.
No one is taking my ship. Sisters take care of each other. We can't pay off debt with your morality.
No one is taking my ship. I said no one is taking my ship!
It's like she's fucking 5!
Oh no, what did you do?
I dumped the spice.
You did what?
Problem solved. Neither one of you gets your way, and I keep my ship. You're welcome.
Of all the choices you could make, that is literally the worst one.
And possibly above all else, it just drags and drags and drags. The droid arc from season 5 was paced better, to be completely honest. And one of the more groan-inducing episodes is where Ahsoka and the sisters escape from prison, only to end up right back in prison at the end of the episode, leaving us to wonder just what the point of all of it was. But finally, at the end of the arc, Ahsoka reunites with Bo-Katan, and considering her history with Bo-Katan, I found it very questionable how quickly Ahsoka agreed to help her with the siege of Mandalore, and how invested she was in the Mandalorians' cause. In retrospect, much like the Bad Batch, which now has been revealed to have been featured in Season 7 of Clone Wars to set up its own animated series, the middle portion of Clone Wars Season 7 really feels like it was dedicated to promote and advertise the Martinez sisters, having their own animated or live-action spin-off. Seeing how poorly these characters and this arc was received by Star Wars fans in the months since, it's no wonder they didn't showcase it at the Disney Investor Day back in December 2020. And it's here we finally make it to the Clone Wars finale that the whole series has been building to. Not without its controversy, of course, but this is the big payoff for all of it. Now, these last 4 episodes have been universally praised by the masses. Did it live up to the hype and the expectations you all set for me? To be perfectly honest, it fucking exceeded them. It's very clear that Dave Filoni wanted this series to go out with the biggest bang possible, and by God did it. I honestly had some spoilers for what was coming, but I had no idea that it would be entirely following Ahsoka, and I had no idea that her touching reunion with Anakin and Obi-Wan would be short-lived, as during her proposal for the assault on Mandalore is exactly when Revenge of the Sith actually begins. Once Obi-Wan came storming in saying that there was an attack on Coruscant and the Chancellor had been kidnapped, I got flooded with chills because I knew where it was all going and who this story was going to be following, especially after Anakin just presented Ahsoka with her own battalion of clones along with Rex after giving Ahsoka her new and improved lightsabers. I knew that this would be the last time Ahsoka was going to see Anakin, and it became clear who these final 4 episodes were going to be about and whose perspective was going to tell this story that we already knew, but from the shadows that we didn't get to see.
They're good as new. Maybe a little better.
Anakin, good luck.
Prior to Ahsoka and Anakin's farewell, there was a bit of friction with Ahsoka trying to negotiate with Obi-Wan, as she was still jaded with the Jedi Council, who Obi-Wan still reported to. When Anakin tries to break the ice, Ahsoka says,
"You two certainly haven't changed."
Is that a bad thing?
If only they knew. Now, this is why I chose to highlight this line in particular. You see, the Star Wars mainline saga was constructed by the ground up with foreshadowing as a huge part of designing and implementing the story, as well as echoing events from past to future. It's a staple of George Lucas, which is why that line hit very deeply for me as a huge Star Wars fan. And I really like how Dave Filoni utilized it. But I gotta say, there's one part of this episode that I honestly despise. The part where Ahsoka essentially chews out Obi-Wan for saying that they need to rescue the Chancellor because Coruscant, the capital of the Republic, is under attack. And Ahsoka is all like, "But Obi-Wan, what about my mission? What about the Mandalorians, who Ahsoka has no connection to by comparison?" And she essentially makes Obi-Wan feel guilty for making the right decision. The scene is framed, however, like Obi-Wan is the bad guy, when that's absolutely not the case. This has Disney's creative team all over it, and it makes Ahsoka sound like an insufferable brat, like a moody child who didn't get her way.
I can taste your stink.
And once again, in typical Disney fashion, this attempt to make Ahsoka sound strong and righteous is very contradictory because Ahsoka says this.
Ahsoka, surely you understand, this is a pivotal moment in the Clone Wars. The heart of the Republic is under attack.
I understand that as usual you're playing politics. This is why the people have lost faith in the Jedi. I had too, until I was reminded of what the Order means to people who truly need us.
And where was she reminded of this, I wonder? Oh, it was with the Martinez sisters on Coruscant.
Right now, people on Coruscant need us.
No, the Chancellor needs you.
That's not fair.
I'm not trying to be.
What the fuck?
So the entire point of that arc in assisting Ahsoka's character development is essentially wasted for a nonsensical whammon moment of Ahsoka acting like a bitch to Obi-Wan for no reason. Look, it's one bad moment, a very bad moment, but it doesn't ruin this mostly excellent reunion.
I accept. That is, if Obi-Wan agrees.
Very well. May the Force be with you. One other thing. I killed Maul once. Just to capture him. He doesn't seem to stay dead.
I have an issue with the timeline. I was under the impression that Revenge of the Sith took place over weeks or months, but based on Ahsoka's perspective, during that time period, we are led to believe that it took place over a matter of days, which does raise a few eyebrows based on Clone Wars canon in continuity with Revenge of the Sith. But now let's talk about what you're probably wanting me to talk about most. What did I think of the conflict between Ahsoka and Darth Maul? I thought it was brilliant. Maul emerges after Sidious handed him his mechanical ass back in Season 5. Like in Season 5, Maul is still power hungry, but he's also consumed by fear that his all-powerful, all-knowing master is eventually going to bend the galaxy to his will and him along with it.
Master Kenobi had a more important engagement.
Indeed. I wonder if the moment may be upon us. Soon the Jedi and the Republic will no longer be the controlling interest in the galaxy.
And who will be? You?
No. Darth. Sidious.
What plan? What are you talking about?
The plan. The only plan that matters. Not even I was made aware of its grand design. Played my part. And do you know what happened to me? I was cast aside. I was forgotten. But I survived. And I can thrive in the chaos that is to come.
I am here to bring you to justice.
Justice is merely the construct of the current power base. A base which, according to my calculations, is about to change.
And Darth Sidious is behind it?
He is behind everything. In the shadows, always, but soon, very soon, he will reveal himself.
He doesn't know when, doesn't know how. He just knows Anakin's involved, and Maul had hoped Kenobi would bring Anakin with him to Mandalore, and so Maul would be able to manage 2 measures of revenge in one fell swoop, killing the man who almost killed him a decade ago, who maimed him for life, and denying his master the prized pupil that he craves, who just so happens to be the final piece of his master plan.
I was certain that Kenobi would have come himself, perhaps bring his loyal foe, Skywalker, is it?
Maul had a vision, a dream. The name came to him.
What name?
Skywalker.
What do you want with Anakin Skywalker?
He is the key to everything.
To bring balance to the Force?
To destroy. He has long been groomed for his role as my master's new apprentice.
You lie.
I'm afraid not.
Remember, the first and only reality of the Sith. There can only be 2, and you are no longer my apprentice. You have been replaced.
In fact, I was so certain of his fate that I orchestrated this war to lure him here with Kenobi, to kill him, thus depriving Sidious of his prized pupil.
Also echoing the prequels, like Count Dooku had a soft spot for Obi-Wan, Maul has a soft spot for Ahsoka, given that she was also an apprentice cast aside. So he tries to reason with her, telling her the truth about what is to come, just as Dooku did to Obi-Wan long ago on Geonosis.
The truth. The truth. What if I told you that the Republic was now under the control of the Dark Lord of the Sith?
No, that's not possible. The Jedi would be aware of it.
Qui-Gon always spoke very highly of you. I wish he were still alive. I could use his help right now. You must join me, Obi-Wan, and together we will destroy the Sith.
Were you not cast out of your order?
I left voluntarily.
But you were motivated to leave by the hypocrisy of the Jedi Council. We were both tools for greater powers.
With your help, The Jedi can stop Sidious before it's too late.
Too late? For what? The Republic to fall? It already has, and you just can't see it. There is no justice, no law, no order, except for the one that will replace it. The time of the Jedi has passed. They cannot defeat Sidious. But together, you and I can.
But Ahsoka, unwilling to accept this startling revelation about Sidious and Anakin, refuses to accept the truth.
I know Anakin. Your vision is flawed.
I see the Padawan. It is time for a lesson. It's one last lesson.
This conversation is very likely some of the best dialogue in the entirety of the series, and it begins what is very likely the best duel in the Clone Wars series, the Battle of Lost Apprentices. Yeah, that's what I'm calling it, shut up. I think it sounds pretty badass. Much to my amazement, and paying more homage to the prequels, Dave Filoni brought in Ray Park to motion capture the fight scene as Darth Maul, which is why the choreography felt like The Phantom Menace. It felt like Darth Maul's fighting style, because it was. And because of the motion capture, this is why the fight scene itself flows so well.
So when we see Maul fighting, it's gonna be really Maul fighting.
Amazing to play Darth Maul again. We've just been hitting it hard, coming up with some new stuff. We're trying to do as much as we can, butterfly twists and flips and corkscrews.
We get the speed of Maul, we get moves that are inherent to Rey.
Ahsoka, Tano? Oh, you have Kenobi's arrogance.
You'll find I have many qualities for you to dislike.
And then I'm finally taking Rey's performance and Sam's performance and putting them together.
Using mocap for the first time, all those sort of subtle nuances that Rey is able to bring to Maul were just so helpful. It's everybody coming together, and then the lighting team takes it all to another level.
The writing, along with the production value, the choreography, art direction, animation quality, cinematography, and the music made this duel a staple in the Star Wars franchise, up there with Luke vs. Vader, Battle of Heroes, and Duel of the Fates. Now, before I continue, I want to address a criticism of this fight that I've heard echoed throughout the internet regarding this duel on Mandalore. The biggest problem a lot of people seem to have with it is that Ahsoka shouldn't be even in the same league as Darth Maul in terms of power and skill, and that the fight makes no sense due to power scaling. Now, power scaling issues have reared its ugly head more than once throughout the Clone Wars, and my perspective on this particular duel has changed several times. I've heard many different takes on the matter, but I've ultimately come to the conclusion that most people actually have this backwards. Let me explain. And this is why I brushed over the duel in the Season 4 finale between Maul, Kenobi, Savage, and Ventress. See, prior to that duel, Lucasfilm took the time to show us that Darth Maul, although having his legs, mind, and health restored, couldn't connect to the Force to the same depth he once was. After over a decade of inactivity and being completely out of practice with his Sith training, Darth Maul was severely weaker than he was in his prime. However, that same plot point is later forgotten in that very same episode when Darth Maul is taking on a much stronger and skillful Obi-Wan Kenobi than he fought back on Naboo in The Phantom Menace. And then in the very next episode of Season 5, we see Maul is already besting Savage like he's nothing, and it's here we have the problem. Initially, Maul did need Savage, and Savage did need Maul. Savage was the muscle of the two, and Maul needed his help to capture Kenobi in the Season 4 finale. But while Savage was the muscle and the more powerful of the two, he needed the wisdom of his older brother to help further his dark side training. So neither character was redundant. However, once Maul instantly gets his strength and skills back, Savage pretty much becomes redundant by that point. He's simply Maul's henchman, because now Maul is able to best everyone, including Jedi Masters, on his own, when in reality, he shouldn't be able to. He should be formidable, but far, far weaker than his former self, because he hasn't used the Force in over 10 years, and a large proportion of his body is made up of machinery. Having been maimed to that degree, much like Darth Vader's injuries, Maul's true potential should have been forever lost to him. Had this been the case, Savage would have served a much more practical purpose for the remainder of his screen time. But this is why I'm actually very much content with Darth Maul's final 3 duels of the series. Firstly, the duel for Mandalore against Vizla. Vizla was a man who did not have Jedi reflexes and couldn't use the Force, yet could still put up a good hand-to-hand combat fight against a weaker Darth Maul. Secondly, the duel with Sidious. Personally, I had a bit of an issue with Sidious being able to take on Asajj and Maul at the same time, each with their own respective level of skill. Though granted, Sidious took on half the Jedi Council by himself, however, Maul should be weaker after having come back from his injuries. That makes the most sense. It provides more credibility to the fight and somewhat grounds the power and skill of Darth Sidious, since Maul should, by all accounts, be weaker than his former self, and needed Savage Opress to put up a decent fight. Finally, of course, bringing this full circle, a weaker than his prime Darth Maul would have still been stronger than Ahsoka Tano as a Padawan. But again, it's heavily implied throughout the duel that Maul was testing her for the majority of the time, and Ahsoka herself has had an extremely intense upbringing as a Padawan, being the apprentice of the most gifted Jedi in recent history, and having fought several duels throughout the duration of the Clone Wars, essentially being her baptism by fire. Trust me, I have an issue or two with the final duel in the Clone Wars, particularly with how the fight ends, but how the characters match up against one another is not one of them. I personally think it's far more realistic than Maul being able to take on Obi-Wan as a Jedi Master the day after having his sanity restored. And it was Lucasfilm's poor handling of Darth Maul's abilities post-trauma that caused an issue, because they introduced this plot point and then abandoned it. But intentional or not, all the other duels fit right in with what makes sense, and Maul's power increasing instead of initially decreasing certainly did not. Let's go into a bit more detail on the duel. I love the moment when Ahsoka gets back to her feet after barely surviving Maul's onslaught and kicking him through the window out of sheer desperation, and is literally gasping for air to show that the duel itself is taxing her tremendously just to keep up with Maul.
There's a moment in the battle between Maul and Ahsoka when Maul is kicked out of the window and Ahsoka gets up and is in a bit of a panic, but then recenters herself. Was she simply realizing how aggressive Maul is, or was she thinking about something deeper? Dave Filoni, executive producer and supervising director, answered, "When Ahsoka pauses and struggles at the break in the fight, it was really meant to portray the toll it took on her to compete against Maul."
As I said before, Maul was the better fighter in this duel, and Lucasfilm certainly made sure to account for that. The second half of the duel that took place in the sky was beautifully choreographed and really showed the precision and skill one needs when handling a lightsaber, including footwork. Like I said, Maul had a bit of a soft spot for Ahsoka, and he was, for the most part, testing her. But you'll notice when he's finally had enough, he disarms her easily and makes it clear that he's done indulging her. Again, to be clear, Maul was the better fighter, and Lucasfilm has even said as much.
"I knew Maul had to lose this fight, but I didn't want to make it easy. I wanted it to take a lot out of Ahsoka to compete at his level. He is the stronger sword fighter, but he is very overconfident. Part of Maul's character is he underestimates his opponent, and he fails time and again to overcome this flaw. Still, it should be difficult for Ahsoka, and it should take all of her focus and the ability to control her fear to allow her to defeat Maul in the end."
However, now we come to the end of the duel, which unfortunately does end on a down note. I can understand Maul losing the fight due to overconfidence and carelessness and arrogance. That's a classic Sith trait. And it is consistent with his character, but not like this. This did not resemble arrogance. Maul, unable to land a single strike on a disarmed Ahsoka who has nowhere to go and no way to maneuver, is not arrogance. It's sheer incompetence. And he just gets disarmed like a moron because the plot dictated he had to lose the duel. I honestly just can't believe this is how they decided to make Maul lose. The way Darth Maul lost in The Phantom Menace wasn't perfect either, but at least Kenobi caught Maul somewhat by surprise. Disney just decided to make him look like a complete fool. But that's a real shame, you see, because a much better solution was staring them straight in the face. Maul and Ahsoka are high above Mandalore, and Maul had already sliced one end of the beam that Ahsoka was standing on. He only needed to cut the other end of the beam so that she would fall to her death. What they could have done, and what I thought they were going to do when I first watched this, is have Maul give Ahsoka one last chance, and after she refuses, he slashes the beam, and Ahsoka jumps over Maul while he's overextended with his saber, and she kicks him off the edge. This would not only achieve what they wanted to, making Maul lose simply to being careless due to arrogance, but this very effectively mirrors how Maul lost the first time to Obi-Wan. I also thought they could have Ahsoka catch Maul by force gripping his lightsaber, and then Maul realizing that he's lost could let go voluntarily because he would rather die than be a prisoner of the Republic, or worse, become a prisoner of Sidious once again. And then they could let the scene play out.
Let me go. Let me die. You're all going to burn. We're all going to die. You don't know what you're doing.
Maul's hysteria and fear at the thought of being at Sidious's mercy again, and what imminent destructive plan he knows he's about to set in motion, sent chills up my spine, and it adds further tension to what we, the audience, know what's coming, but sadly the characters, save for Maul, are oblivious to. One could even say that Maul was speaking for the audience at this moment, further building suspense for the galaxy-changing event that we know is about to take place. Aside from the ending to the fight itself, the character dynamic, choreography, music, cinematography, and dialogue were all a masterclass in this episode. One thing about Season 7's finale that I simply cannot give enough praise to is the production. The animation is top tier. Admittedly, it's fantastic for all of the final season, a huge step up from Season 6, but the final 4 episodes in particular were absolutely gorgeous.
16 times the detail.
In addition to that, the cinematography for the final 4 episodes was magnificent and truly felt epic, like everything was coming to an end. And this was only enhanced by the music, which was easily the best sound mix in the entirety of the Clone Wars series, and honestly stands on par with any of the 6 mainline Star Wars films. Now, admittedly, all of these production elements shine brightest during Ahsoka's battle with Darth Maul, but even in the more quiet, reflective moments, like when Ahsoka is leaving Mandalore with Darth Maul, and you know she's not going to make it to Coruscant because she's about to be betrayed.
Goodbye, Ahsoka Tano.
Or when Ahsoka is staring at the mass grave of a crashed Republic cruiser that she almost died on after Order 66 was carried out, lamenting the loss of her soldiers who she deeply cared for, as well as lamenting the loss of her master who tragically became a monster, and brought about ruin and death to the Republic and the Jedi. That somber, haunting, yet beautiful music plays throughout these quieter portions of the finale that really drives home that sense of finality. It's perfect. It really is, or at least the production is. But briefly back to Mandalore, throughout the Clone Wars finale, we see Ahsoka has interacted with the likes of Anakin, Obi-Wan, and the Jedi Council, signaling to the audience just where the series is up to in the timeline. Obi-Wan tells Ahsoka that he is being sent to hunt down Grievous on Utapau, and that Anakin, despite Obi-Wan's objections, was assigned to spy on the Chancellor. And I love how the Clone Wars writers were able to tie in Ahsoka's disdain and distrust for the Jedi Council in with Revenge of the Sith. Unlike the Jedi knowing who Tyrannus is, or Yoda encountering Sidious in a dream and seeing visions of Order 66, Ahsoka receiving revelations from Darth Maul about Anakin and Sidious actually does make sense with the plot of Revenge of the Sith. And the fact that she doesn't believe Maul due to his Sith nature, despite the fact that he was telling her the truth.
I know Anakin. Your vision is flawed.
And the fact that she doesn't divulge this information to the Jedi Council prior to them finding out who Sidious's identity is makes complete sense because she doesn't trust them either. And this is very consistent with her character and nicely integrated into the background of Revenge of the Sith. Ahsoka knows what the Council are capable of when they suspect someone of being a traitor. And they could just as easily do to Anakin what they did to her. Anakin was the only one who believed in her when the Jedi turned their backs on her, and so she trusts the information to know nobody but Anakin himself.
Ahsoka, more to say, have you? A message for Skywalker, perhaps?
No, Master. Thank you. I'll tell him myself when I see him.
May the Force be with you, Padawan.
You didn't tell them what Maul said about General Skywalker.
No, I didn't.
But sadly, that conversation never takes place, and Ahsoka was yet another person who could have prevented the downfall of the Jedi, had the Jedi themselves not made yet another mistake in their arrogance and hypocrisy over the course of the Clone Wars. And so Ahsoka and Rex leave Mandalore, salute each other after a long hard war, and they hope this is the last of their countless battles together. Ahsoka looks to the horizon, to the future, as if all this war and conflict will finally be behind her, and then...
Execute Order 66. Yes, Lord Sidious.
I do like how Sidious's message comes seconds after Ahsoka senses a disturbance in the Force, meaning she wasn't sensing the event as it transpired, rather she felt an echo of it happening after some time had passed. And Order 66 is currently being carried out all across the galaxy. And here we see Rex succumb to what Fives hopelessly tried to warn him about back in Season 6. The dreaded inhibitor chips have been initiated, and Rex's programming is taking effect.
Rex?
No. I'll do it.
Rex.
Having Rex get that order and to make that switch felt like a thunderbolt. To switch that character into this kind of mode against those that he loved and that we had established and worked with for so many seasons, that's kind of a horrifying moment. The way I played it was that there was still some internal resistance to the order for Rex, but this was an inevitable thing that was programmed in to all clones, and so it's ultimately something that you can't resist by force of will. But I tried to show that there was some part of Rex that was still lingering there, fighting back.
But Rex is one of the most grizzled, experienced, and mentally tough clones in the Grand Army of the Republic. Not to mention the history and affection he has for Ahsoka, who he considers a close friend, until his free will is taken away. Rex has just enough willpower to tell Ahsoka to find Fives. He knows what's happening, and he needs Ahsoka to see it for herself. Thankfully, Fives' sacrifice wasn't in vain, but for now, it's too late.
Fives,
fight him! Ahsoka manages to unlock Rex's statement on the circumstances surrounding Fives' death. A nice detail was the fact that Ahsoka used Anakin's passcode to unlock the restricted access to Rex's audio log on the inhibitor chips. The fact that Ahsoka knew Anakin's passcode shows how much he trusted her as a Padawan. Ahsoka frees Maul, who in his sheer admiration and terror laments the genius of Sidious's plan.
The clones turned against me. Even Rex. I don't know why, they just suddenly warped themselves.
Brilliant. Bones, bred for combat, all part of the plasma, privy to my master's plan. But now I see it. He turned the Jedi's own army against them.
Ahsoka needs a diversion, and she makes a deal with Maul, allowing him to live if he does what he does best.
Fatality.
You guys get the idea. Ahsoka manages to isolate Rex from his troopers and have his inhibitor chip removed, which is fine as far as the Clone Wars is concerned, but it does cause yet another continuity error, with this time Star Wars Rebels of all things.
Later they said they had chips in their heads that made them do it. Said they had no choice.
I didn't betray my Jedi. Wolf, Gregor, and I all removed our control chips. We all have a choice.
Yeah, I don't think you did, Rex. That's not how it went down, is it?
Are you okay?
Yeah, kid. I'm okay. Sorry for what happened earlier. I almost killed you.
If I had to guess, it's that Dave Filoni simply couldn't resist giving us the gut punch of having Rex turn on Ahsoka. He was thinking of emotion first and consistency second, and it was still a very well executed scene, but continuity-wise, Rex should have fought his way out with Ahsoka as soon as the order was given.
Showing Order 66 on the Clone Wars was kind of an inevitability. I thought of it for a long time, and how would we play it out? What was the point of view?
The final sequence of the Clone Wars is Rex and Ahsoka fighting their way off the doomed Ventress starfighter that is imminently going to crash into a nearby moon after Maul sabotaged the hyperdrive. It becomes a race against time to get off the ship before it crashes, but standing before Ahsoka and Rex is an army of clones led by ARC Trooper Jesse, who are all willing to lay down their lives to stop their escape. Rex and Ahsoka are heartbroken at the idea of having to kill their own brothers-in-arms in order to survive this. Ahsoka then devises a mostly clever plan to try and chance their way out, without explicitly killing any clone. They would try and use the technicality of Order 66 not applying to Ahsoka, since she is no longer a Jedi, which honestly I thought was a neat loophole that had a chance of working because it was true. Ultimately it fails, since it turns out Order 66 doesn't distinguish between past and present Jedi, and after, they resort to the backup plan of fighting their way out to a docked Republic spacecraft. Rex would use his weapons in stun mode, while Ahsoka defends him using her lightsabers. While the sequence is heart-pounding, it does venture too far into the realm of just spectacle. When you consider just how easily, or rather how effectively, the clones were at killing other Jedi affected by Order 66, though admittedly some of those Jedi were caught in a very awkward crossfire, the amount of clone troopers Ahsoka is able to fend off against, not to mention temporarily stopping Maul's spacecraft from escaping by means of the Force, all of it, while again great spectacle, was all just a bit too much and really made you question the logic in select moments. Ahsoka's escape should have been much more tame by comparison, but regardless, she and Rex narrowly escape the doomed vessel and have a moment to ponder what tragedy has just befallen them. And then finally, let's talk about the ending scene with Ahsoka standing at the grave of her soldiers, paying her respects. While doing so, she takes one last look at the lightsaber Anakin gave her as a gift, a token of their relationship as master and student, and of course their friendship. But she realizes her friend is gone, her master is gone, and all that remains is the monster he became. She doesn't know why this happened, but it did. Whether it's out of disgust for his actions, or if it's out of sorrow, or if it's out of pain, or likely all of the above. She lets the lightsaber slip from her palm into the sand as she walks away from the saber, like she's walking away from the memories of her past, the memory of her friend, the memory of Anakin, because it's simply too big a burden to bear. At least that's how I saw it. That's the most beautiful thing about this scene, the way it's done. So many things can be inferred by fans of this character who know her so well, and the way it's portrayed. It just feels right. It fits. It makes sense. And not a single word is spoken. It's so quiet and hauntingly beautiful. And of course, this is followed up by a small epilogue, as in the not so distant future, the Empire reigns supreme, and we see the remains of Anakin Skywalker now residing in Darth Vader, who's surveying the wreckage like he's tracking something or someone, only to come across the saber that Ahsoka had left there, that he clearly recognizes immediately. Vader doesn't put the lightsaber back or destroy it. Instead, Anakin examines it, turns it on, and takes it with him. We as the audience see what he's become, the aftermath of those horrible events and the price he paid. And without any dialogue in this heartbreaking scene, we see that there is still a piece of Anakin Skywalker that lives in that suit. There is still a piece of Ahsoka's master in there somewhere. And while Anakin walks away, cursed to live the life he has brought about himself, we see a clone trooper's helmet that bore the marks of Ahsoka, his apprentice. Troops that Anakin once led, troops that he gave to Ahsoka as the last remains of the Clone Wars that transpired and changed the way of the galaxy forever. And that brings the Clone Wars series to an end. I gotta be honest with you guys, it's been a good long while that a finale has hit me the way that this one did. This really got me in the feels. It was honestly something else, something I haven't seen before. The Clone Wars is unlike any animated series I think that's ever existed, and its finale went above and beyond for its fans to be an action-packed, heart-wrenching, epic conclusion to this epic series and its conflict. And while it's not flawless, I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be. I'm happy to say that the finale to the Clone Wars series, and the series as a whole, was well and truly awesome. And Dave Filoni, George Lucas, and everyone involved with it should be very proud of themselves. And I want to give a big heartfelt thank you to my fantastic audience who pleaded for me day in and day out to watch this series all the way to the end. My only regret is that I couldn't cover everything I wanted to in the detail that I would have liked, even having to leave out certain beloved characters that I came to adore throughout the series. Like Hondo Ohnaka, one of the funniest and most enjoyable side characters the Clone Wars had to offer. He's Captain Jack Sparrow in space, a lovable asshole that, despite only being out for money, still helps out the good guys from time to time.
3 of your lieutenants have already sworn allegiance to me. Traitors. Scum! I'm so proud. But so betrayed. Ready the men, we're leaving. My men aren't going anywhere with you. How powerful can they be? They are running away from Kenobi. Filth. You will pay for your insolence. Insolence? We are pirates. We don't even know what that means.
Asajj Ventress, one of the best characters and character arcs from the Clone Wars, starting out as a Sith apprentice to Count Dooku, inevitably betrayed due to the rule of 2, questing for revenge that ultimately fails, a fallen apprentice turned bounty hunter who goes from villain to anti-hero, even helping Ahsoka along in her journey. It's just a damn shame they never finished writing her character's journey in the Clone Wars, once again leaving it for external source material. Cad Bane was an amazing bad guy. He was a smart, charismatic, crafty villain who plays an excellent role in the Clone Wars and actually tests the protagonists on several occasions that force them to make tough decisions.
You have nowhere left to run, bounty hunter.
Let me worry about that, Jedi. If I activate this control, the outside airlock will open and she will be sucked into oblivion. Do you think you can kill me and then save her before she's pulled out into space? It's a horrible way to die. Besides, isn't negotiation the Jedi way?
Also, the humor and charm of the Clone Wars is some of the most endearing I've ever come across, and that's actually in large part due to the droids. Their dialogue amongst themselves during combat scenarios, or when they performed an incompetent action, or when they knew their demise was imminent, was just so glorious to watch. And it actually elicited many chuckles and laugh out louds from me, and it really lent to the personality of the Clone Wars as a series.
Come on, there's 3 of us and only 1 of him. It won't matter. That was impressive. Don't shoot, I'm not the commander. He's the commander. Guess I'm the commander now. Sir, we need to get our power recharged.
Not this again! How could your power cells be so depleted?
You would not let us ride on one of those creatures with you, sir. If you would allow us to close down for a few moments.
Any more complaints?
We were experiencing some drag, but the sensors are stabilized now.
You were experiencing drag in the vacuum of space.
Yeah, strange.
I also didn't get to talk about the stylistic choices for the Clone Wars aesthetic and art style, and the fact that George Lucas demanded they shoot directly from CGI and forego the use of storyboards. I'm not an animation specialist by any means, but apparently back in 2008, this was quite the daring task, and apparently it paid off because it allowed for quicker production of the episodes at a level of quality that kept evolving with each season.
The first 12 episodes, we were strictly doing storyboards. A pipeline that's been around since Snow White, you know.
Well, we developed photorealistic CG a long time ago, you know, basically with Jurassic Park. We were able to develop it so it looked photoreal. We use photoreal in all kinds of stuff. We also, since really Phantom Menace, we have photoreal actors who look exactly like the real actors. And we use them interchangeably, and most people don't know the difference. They don't act. They usually do stunts because it's very hard to get computer animation to act. It doesn't know how. So you need very talented actors to do the voices. You need very talented actors to be the animators. It's much easier just to use an actor. I don't believe the job of CG animation is to create animation that looks realistic, because that's what live action movies are for. The charm of an animated film is the fact that it's done in a particular style, an artistic style. In this case, we went retro into the 50s and 60s and used the style of Jerry Anderson, who did a TV series during that period called Thunderbirds. And they were marionettes. And so you'll notice on this thing, You see the paint on the characters. They've been painted. They're painted characters or not. And they're very, very, very stylized. And I think that's what animation does best. It's the thing that it can do that live action can't do. And we moved technology forward in a lot of different ways to be able to get very, very high quality for very limited resources, which is what you have on television. But at the same time, it turned out so great that when I saw it for the first time on the big screen, I said, this is brilliant. I mean, we could make a feature out of this.
But then George kind of dropped a bomb on us, especially me, and said that ultimately he didn't want to do storyboards.
What I've learned is that George doesn't really work in a vacuum where it's just like he's just going to do the story. He also wants to push the technology. He does both, and ZViz is where that technology push was.
George wanted to skip the whole storyboard process and just shoot it in CG.
In retrospect, that's when we really hit the ground running, and that's when we really picked up steam. It might have taken a bit of time to get there with the transition, but really in retrospect, it was a great thing, and things got a lot smoother after that.
The beauty of ZViz, from an editorial standpoint, is that we'd get a fully realized environment to work in. We didn't need to guess what was trying to be represented by a storyboard.
Right from the very beginning, we wanted the TV series to be very high quality. We wanted it to use CG animation in a way that it hadn't been used before. What we ended up with is something very new and different. When we saw it on the big screen, we realized that it really looks great.
And finally, one of the best stylistic choices for the Clone Wars series was the opening text for each episode, giving the audience a small glimpse of what's to come by providing the self-contained thematical element present in each episode. Just another aspect unique to the Clone Wars and very consistent with what Star Wars is. I could have kept this video going for another 2 hours at least, but I think it's time we wrap things up here. Once more with feeling. Star Wars The Clone Wars was a wildly ambitious endeavor undertaken by George Lucas and Dave Filoni that gave us so much more to adore about the Star Wars franchise that we all know and love. Sure, there were production problems. Sure, there were some continuity inconsistencies and at times poorly written moments. But all that pales in the grand scheme of quality the Clone Wars has to offer its fans and fans of Star Wars as a whole. It's not the greatest thing ever, and it wasn't perfect, but it was damn good, and that's all it ever needed to be.
For us, the storm has passed. The war is over. But let us never forget those who journeyed into the howling dark and did not return. For their decision required courage beyond measure, sacrifice, and unshakable conviction that their fight, our fight, was elsewhere. As we start to rebuild, this hillside will remain barren, a memorial to heroes fallen. They ennobled all of us, and they shall not be forgotten. Hard to believe he's dead.
Were it so easy.
So, what was it like to fight in Clone? I'll tell you, war was never dull. The general I fought with was among the greatest of the Jedi.
He was my master.
Gives us clones all a mixed feeling about the war. Many people wish it never happened. But without it, even clones wouldn't exist.
The Republic couldn't have asked for better soldiers, nor I, a better friend.
Oh, hello. You're still here. Thank you for sticking till the end. I really appreciate it. It's good for the algorithm and it helps me out quite a bit. Yes, this is the end of the video, but I couldn't leave without offering up a few more thank yous, and just to let you know about some additional things regarding this channel and others as well if you're interested. In regards to the video itself, doing an entire series in one video is a heavy, heavy task. To put it in perspective, The Clone Wars has 132 episodes, a movie, and documentaries on almost each of those episodes. That was a lot to sift through in order to get the clips I needed to reflect my talking points. And not to mention, that's almost 2 full days of content to talk about in a condensed video. Much as I enjoyed making this, it was an absolute nightmare in terms of actually putting it together. Television episodes and movies are easy. Television seasons are tough but doable. But I doubt I'll ever cover a whole series in one video ever again, or at least in the near future. Anyway, now to the thank yous. Firstly, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my Patreon supporters for their contributions to the channel. For those of you who don't know, Patreon is essentially a donation service for passionate viewers who would like to support the channel and its videos. I've left a link in the description for any who are interested. Secondly, I would like to thank my YouTube members for their contributions to the channel. This essentially serves the same function as Patreon, but it's far more practical for viewers who are interested in the channel's podcast, of which I showed a brief clip of in this video regarding the whole Clancy Brown revelation. You can hit the join button if you're interested, or just follow the link in the description. Thirdly, if you're interested in the channel, feel free to check out the channel's Discord server. What Discord basically is an online community where fans of this channel go to congregate and talk about a range of different topics, ranging from Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, anime, video games, and other pop culture stuff as well. Check it out at your leisure, and who knows, maybe you'll make some friends along the way. Now, a special thank you to all of these awesome individuals: Coolman229, Metal Gear Mando, AngelRin89, Grant Harper, Bolt9236, The Real Wise Wolf, Celestine aka Ghost, Palpameme, Kel of Scots, Spinobi, Ultimate Toby, E-Man Gameplay, and a British Potato. And anyone I forgot to mention, thank you guys for your fantastic feedback that allowed me to make this video as best as I could. And finally, at long last, that brings us to the very end. Here's one last thank you for staying to the end of the video. You are a legend, and I'll see you next time.